in the basement. Uh-huh.
Why do we refer to Hashem as he and not it? Or she? I know why not she.
Well, why not she?
I mean, Shekhinah
Shekhinah is a she.
I know. But kids is if Hashem is an Tziut, then it's it, not a he.
It's. I think you're following the theme. If he wants a relationship, then he's not an it anymore. An it doesn't want a relationship. A he and a she need each other. So the question is, should he be a he or a she? So the problem is not what he is, but what we are. Because if Hashem is the she, then we have to be the he. That's not good. There was a big debate between some famous rabbi and the Christians back in the olden days. And the Christian asked the rabbi, how come in your Torah God is so punishing? He punishes and he's angry and he's... The answer was brilliant. The rabbi said, it's because we would rather that he does the punishing than that we should do the punishing. By you, your God doesn't punish, so you punish everybody. You make the Crusades and you make the Inquisitions and you torture people. Better leave it to him. Let him be the he, we want to be the she. Right? Also because he married us, which is the masculine. He came to take us out of Mitzrayim. So what is this thing about Gehenna? Anybody know? What's Gehenna? A place for bad people.
Purgatory for your sins.
Purgatory. That's good.
Well, it's also a place to get cleansed first, then I go to
So it's a dry cleaner. Or,
it depends on how bad.
Stay on your shirt. Put it in the washing machine.
depends how much cleaning you need.
Throw it out.
There's a fire, there's hot water, it boils. What's going on over there? How do you boil a soul? How does a neshama get punished?
Send them downstairs.
Huh? The only way that a soul can suffer is from shame. So imagine a neshama comes to Shamayim, and all the other souls are there, and you don't remember how to be a soul because you're used to being a body. That's very embarrassing. It's like walking into a shul and you don't know when to stand, when to sit, when to turn around. So what is the punishment of the sin? The embarrassment. When the soul goes back to a world of souls and it doesn't fit in, it's very embarrassing. What happens when you get embarrassed? You burn. You burn with shame. Right? So, Gehenna is not a place. It's like heaven goes up and this will go down. There's no up or down. You have two souls side by side. One is in heaven because it knows how to be a soul. And the other one sitting right next to it is embarrassed. So he's in Gehenna. How long can you be embarrassed? Up to 12 months. Maximum. And that's why we say Kaddish for 11. Because we don't want to suggest that this guy needed the maximum. But on the other hand, maybe he did. So we say 11 months, not 12. But what is Gehenna? Gehenna simply means you're embarrassed. Heaven means you come back after 80, 90, 100 years on earth, you come back and you remember how to be a neshama. It's as if you never left. That's heaven. So what is the shame, or what is the fear of going to Gehenna? The shame. But the shame for doing a sin, you don't have to wait until you get to Gehenna. If you're embarrassed by your sin, you're already cleaned. You've already burned it off. So we can do tshuva on earth, and then we don't have to go to Gehenna because we were already embarrassed. We were already ashamed. And the shame burns off the sin. So the worst thing is a person who does a sin and he's not ashamed. He has no shame, no busha. That means that he's lost his conscience. He is so insensitive, he's not even ashamed. And then something else has to embarrass him in order to get him to get cleaned up. But if we're embarrassed ourselves, we don't have to go to Gehenna.
Where does this notion come that Gehenna is downstairs? I mean, I know Korah, when he went under, they said that's the petach of Gehenna. But where does this notion come from?
Because we put everything into physical. So we say, holy is up, unholy is down. We don't mean physically up or down. We mean this is higher and this is lower. This is more and this is less, but not physically. Not physically. So there is no physical place where you can go visit on visiting day. I don't know if they have visiting day in Gehenna. I think they have. I mean, if you have a relative there, can you go visit?
Pretty embarrassing.
Bring him some candy. I mean, something. Of course you can. You can be sitting right next to him. But you're not embarrassed. And he is. So he's in Gehenna, and you're not. So you.
Just 4 days after
Hi, welcome to Ivy's Kosher Kitchen. It's me and I'm back, and I've got a simple recipe for you. We're going simple, basic, something that's sort of an everyday thing, but if you kick it up, great for a holiday, okay? Before we begin anything, and I'll tell you what the recipe is, as always, let's say L'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, borei bli hagefen. Oh, always love starting to cook a little glass of wine. You may notice, by the way, I have another glass here of white as opposed to the red. I'm going to get to that a little bit later as to why I have a red and a white. We're going to start with a chicken. I have a beautiful chicken here. This is courtesy of our friends over at Cole Foods, a pastured chicken, not free range. One step better, it's pastured, which means it lives out in the pasture, enjoying life, eating nice things that they're supposed to eat, little buggies and stuff like that. All the stuff the chickens are meant to eat, this guy's eating. No growth hormones, no antibiotics, of course, and 100% natural. Anyway, we're going to do a simple but effective roasted chicken. First thing we're going to do is put the chicken up here, and I'm going to take my roasting pan. Now, a lot of people are going to say, that's not a roasting pan, that's just a baking pan, a baking dish. And you would be correct about that. That is a baking dish. But what a lot of people have these big fancy deals, you pay $100, $150 for this roasting pan that you use a couple times a year. You don't need to do that. There's other ways that are going to make it really great. The whole idea of a roasting pan, by the way, is that the bird sits up on a grate so the heat can get underneath it, okay? So we're going to do the same thing here, but in a different way. You can see here, I've got a lot of root vegetables, some onions and carrots and some peppers and stuff like that. So we're going to just put these right on the bottom. Anyway, we're going to take our chicken, put it right in here, put our dirty dish in here. Now, I'm going to do all my seasoning and everything right here in my roasting tray, because that way anything that spills off stays in here. And that's a great thing, because when it stays in here, it flavors up all of the vegetables and everything else that we got going here, okay? That's the inside. Now we're going to truss it. Now there's so many different ways you can season chicken. Chicken's like a blank slate. It's like, there it is, a blank canvas. What am I going to do? Okay, so I told you we're doing elegant but simple, something that you would just come home from work, hey, I got a chicken, let me get this thing going. Going into a 400-degree oven, about a half an hour. Then I'm going to flip it, re-season just a slight bit. I'll show you that. It will be for me about a half hour, but for you, it should be just about right away. So let me get this in, and I'll see you in a minute. All right, look at this baby. It's been in about another half hour. Beautifully browned, beautiful skin. One thing I'm going to do at the end here, it's done basically. And how do we know it's done, by the way? We take its temperature. I'm not going to tell you 400 degrees for this amount of time and this amount of poundage. Take your temperature. Instant read thermometer. Put it right here into the breast. Into the thigh. I got 185, which is more than done on a thigh. Put it right into the breast, right in the meat. You don't want to hit the bones. You want to just get into the meat. I got, look at that, 180. So it's good. You want to be up at 165, but it's always going to read a little bit higher coming out, just like this. We're done. I'm going to take a little bit of honey, though. We got a special honey from our friends over at Honey Ridge Farms. This is a...
Hi. We are going to speak about the Parsha, the next coming Parsha. It's also reunited with the beginning of the year, the Rosh.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Yeah, hi, welcome to One People, One World. My name is Rabbi Yaakov David Cohen, and I'm here talking today as we're getting ready for Sukkot, the holiday when the Jewish people commemorate the leaving of Exodus of Egypt, how God protected the Jewish people in the desert. We build a sukkah, which is a hut, basically. And this year is very apropos that we talk about the idea of the UN and the idea of the 70 bulls. For this year, the GA, the General Assembly, coincides with the beginning of Sukkot, which in the times of the temple, when the temple stood, there was they offered every day. They started out with 8 bulls, and every day they decreased until they ended up the final day with 1 bull. And these sacrifices were for the 70 nations. The 70 nations represents the United Nations. And today, as the GA meets, and this year is actually a very special year, because it says that in the times of the temple, each nation came to the Beis Hamikdash, to the temple, to pay pilgrimage and respect to the Jewish people. And being that we're now at this time, we should realize that this is no coincidence, that the fact that the GA is meeting now. What exactly is the Jewish message to the world? The Torah's message is universal. For instance, Torah, it says that God looked into Torah and He created the world. So everything that exists in the world is an opportunity for Torah to utilize it for its potential. I'd like to talk about, for instance, this show is about unity and about the idea of each and every one of us, both men, women, and children, Jew and non-Jew, represents a light, and represents a way to bring light. Is just like a candle. Each candle has a unique opportunity to light another candle, and by that it means lighting up the world. And this is what the 70 bulls represents. The 70 nations, which is an idea of all nations. This represents the idea of unity, all coming together for the Beis Hamikdash, for the one and only God. What is the temple? What is the Beit Hamikdash? The Beit Hamikdash is basically a place where the light of it permeated the entire world. It explains that the windows of the Beit Hamikdash were actually wider on the outside and narrower on the inside, meaning it was meant, just like a lighthouse, to penetrate and to illuminate the world. Not that the light should come in, but rather the light should go out. This is what today, when we're living in a world where everyone is looking at Cosmopolitan, looking at the United Nations, what does it represent? Why is it here in New York? And the reason why it's here in New York is to bring about light. And in New York, we have the light of Torah more than any other place in the world. And as the Rebbe explained, that the reason why they established the United Nations headquarters here in New York is because of the idea of New York and the previous Rebbe being the center of the Torah. The Torah, like I say, is a lighthouse. It's called Torah, or it's called Light of Torah. And the Light of Torah represents a unique path, because light, there's an analogy for godliness as light. Let's examine what light is all about. Light, it doesn't create anything. However, it gives you a sense of perspective of what's what. For instance, if this room were to totally be black right now, we wouldn't know what to do. We wouldn't know, here's a table, here's a chair. So the idea of light represents a unique opportunity, a guidance for both physical and spiritual. Because the physical and the spiritual are not, it's not like the physical is divorced or totally separate from the spiritual. In Judaism, the physical and the spiritual are meshed together, and the physical act is actually a spiritual act, meaning that you find godliness in the very essence of mundane life, in the physical world. So God is expressed in everything you do, from the basics of making a living to taking care of your children, whatever it is, it's a godly act. But the idea of Torah gives you an idea, like we said, that the idea of light doesn't create anything. It gives you a perspective, it gives you a guidance. It's like a ship. in the lighthouse, guiding you into port, telling you where to go, what to be careful of. Because each and every one of us have a struggle, meaning a daily struggle, and this is, we see it more and more today, how the world is becoming a very small and an island. And the dictators and the unity that is found is not going to be created by world leaders. The way world unity is going to be created is within each and every one of us. It's not going to be fought, not like in World War II, on the battlefields, on the beaches, in Normandy, etc. It's going to be fought with each and every one of us having the resolve and the courage and the guidance to do the right thing, and to know that each and every one of us has men, women, and children, Jew and non-Jew, all for every people around the world. Every single 8 billion of us have the opportunity to create that light. And the way we create it is we illuminate ourselves. By illuminating ourselves, meaning that we realize that there's a purpose in life. People are looking for meaning. The idea of this universal no-hide code, or UN in the United Nations, is a means for us to unite and to bridge together the Muslim culture, the Christian culture, the Buddhist culture, and by them looking at Torah as a light, like we say, Torah is called Torah Or, which means light. That in itself brings about unity within and unity without. As a child, they used to give us an analogy of here in the United Nations and in Washington, they're trying to put together a map of the world. And there's a famous story about a child, after session after session, resolution after resolution, they couldn't do it. Finally, a young child comes together, and in a matter of seconds, he puts together a map of the world. And the question is asked, how did you do it? He says, very simply, I put the two eyes, the nose, the mouth together, and by that, and on the flip side of a person was the map of the world. Meaning, we don't have to worry about the world. We have to worry about ourselves. When we come together, then the world automatically falls into place. When we find out that each and every action that we do, and that the 70 nations coming together in the United Nations has a purpose, a divine purpose, a purpose that will illuminate the world and bring peace and harmony and bring the light of Torah to the rest of the world. And this is why they're meeting on Sukkot, which again, Sukkot is a time when all nations in the time of the temple met and provided a pilgrimage and provided a spiritual beacon for the nations, for each and every nation. And every nation, by definition, it says on the Isaiah wall, which world leaders signed in 1992, that they signed a major, in January, I think it was January 31st, the world leaders, Russia and the United States, signed a nuclear treaty, an arms reduction. And this is very, very important that it happened over here in New York. It happened right at the Isaiah wall, which it says there'll come a time when this is the prophet Isaiah, who prophesied thousands of years ago, that there will come a time when swords, instruments of war, or today when you have guns, or planes, or tanks, will be transformed into plowsheds, meaning that the arms race will lead to an arms reduction, and ultimately utilizing those valuable resources to feed, to clothe, and to provide shelter for every man, woman, and child on this planet. And we see that that's already coming into fruition. And the whole idea of the United Nations is that each leader comes together in the United Nations and realizes that this is a potential, there's not only potentially, this could be done, this could be a reality. And it's up to each and every individual, both on the government level and both on the, as we're seeing more and more, on the grassroots level. Because at the end of the day, you can have all the money in your world, but at the end of the day, you can only sleep on one bed. The idea is each and every one of us has the ability today to transform the world. As we see more and more for good. We see it more and more on the internet, how people are coming together. There isn't a dictator that could hide their evil, because at the end of the day, information is traveling and information is power. Just like light, which gives you the information of where to sit, it gives you that perspective. It's power. It's ability to know what to do and not be misled by darkness, and to think that, if I made $1 million, I made $1 billion, I'll be happy. The idea is each and every one of us to realize that, number one, there's a famous saying in Hebrew. The word ashir, which means a wealthy person, is made up of 4 letters: Einayim, Shinayim, Yadayim, and Agayim, which means Einayim is eyes, teeth, feet, and hands. Meaning, if a person could see, he could eat, he has what to eat, he has where to sleep, he could walk, he's healthy. That is a wealthy person. A wealthy person means that someone who has what to eat, he has where to sleep, he's happy and content. And it says also that who is rich? One who is satisfied with his lot. Because at the end of the day, we can have billions of dollars, and if you always want more money, and another billion, another dollar, another this, you'll never be happy. So the idea is to be content, to be happy with one's lot. Realize that Hashem, God, loves every single individual. Every individual matters. Every individual collectively, we all are part of the master plan. The master plan, like I said, is that each and every one of us adds that light, illuminates, as it says, Hallelu es Hashem kol goyim, shabchu kol omim ki gova leinu chazeh, which translates as, it's a pasuk in Psalms, chapter 117, and it translates that all nations will come to praise God. And this we see more and more happening when the world is coming to becoming a global village. We see that the idea that we all share in that great masterpiece that God created every individual, and it's all ultimately, when redemption comes, we'll see this on a global scale. We won't see the evil as we see it today. We'll see only the good. Today the challenge is to choose the right and not to be misled by the darkness and the evil, and to realize that that's just that. It's just a challenge to be overcome. It's just an obstacle, a darkness, to be able to see your way through the darkness. And every day God gives us tests and He challenges us. But it's only to make us stronger and to be able to rise up and to become better people, and to realize that we all have the ability to make that difference. So I want to share with you that today, as we come together and the United Nations meets in the Great Assembly, the General Assembly, I should say, in the GHO, where all nations will be represented by the head of state, that we share this universal message, this universal peace, and realize that universal peace is achievable, and is ability, because if every nation comes together, they see that here in New York City, which is an island basically, we're made up of every nation over here living here, and essentially we all live in the same, more or less in the same area, and we live in an island. And just like we've made it here in New York, meaning all countries, whether you come from Pakistan, or you come from Afghanistan, or you come from Texas or Brooklyn, wherever you come from, you feel this is your home, this island. So too the great island of the universe, which is really an island when you think about it. Of course, every one of us is living on an island. We're all surrounded by water, and we're all here in a limited time. Meaning, the infinite God, which is God. How does God, who's infinity, create a finite? And why does He create a finite? He wants us finite people, who are not perfect, who are not angels, but He wants us every day to come up and to do the right thing, and and to bring about that universal light and universal peace. And universal peace comes about by us universally accepting ourselves as a means, as it says that the micro and the macro are all the same, meaning that the macro, the world that we live in, the world, there's an expression or saying that God looked into the Torah and He created the world. The Torah represents light and represents a way to live by. It's a guidebook. It's a universal message and for all people. That doesn't mean everyone has to become Jewish, or everyone has to be certain, or men have to be women, and women have to be men. Each and every one of us have our unique tasks. That's the way God created the world. He created the world that men should be men, women should be women. Children have to learn to respect their parents, because at the end of the day, white hairs cannot be bought. Someone who's lived through wars, who's lived through hardships, and wakes up and knows how to deal with the world, these are people we have to cherish and respect, because at the end of the day, we're all finite. No one has lived forever. And we're all created in the divine image. As my book, I have a book titled Divine Image, now translated in Arabic, and it's all translated as well as in Chinese, Mandarin that is, Korean, French, Spanish, and so on. And this divine image that each and every one of us represents or possesses a unique light. A divine image means divine is light. Light is illuminates the world. And we have the ability to illuminate the world, each and every one of us, in our unique tasks, in our specific tasks. Doesn't mean one is better or worse, like apples and oranges. Like today everyone wants to be, men want to be women, women want to be men. The idea is each and every one of us has to respect that that God created men in a unique way and gave them certain mitzvot, certain tasks to keep him. And He created women. And each one of us have a special role. So too God created the world and He created different cultures. Some of us are more intellectually, some of us more musical, some of us more emotional, but all these things, different attributes, all come together as a symphony, a great symphony. And the symphony is that of all of us, the whole universe coming together as one, as this show represents, in that one people, one world under God, which is really about bringing together nations of the world, uniting the world under the banner of the universal code, under the banner of peace, under the banner of love, under the banner of unity, and cure, which is basically bringing a cure to the world. How do we bring a cure? Cure represents communication, respect, that we have to communicate with each other, respect each other, understanding, respect, and education. When we have these ideas that we understand each other, we communicate with each other, we respect each other, and we educate. We feel we become educated by each other. Meaning, each and every one of us. Someone could say, "Well, I'm very intellectual. How could I learn from someone who's emotionally?" The answer is, even King David was able to learn from a fool. Everyone has something to share, and sometimes, if you can learn in the positive, just by learning, it says that sometimes which means there's a great advantage from light by having the contrast of darkness, and there's also a great advantage of having a fool of wisdom when seeing a fool. So even if sometimes you say, how could I learn from a fool? Number one, even negative, even learning by what not to do is also learning. But even I think it says it says in Ethics of Our Fathers that every person has something to share. Every individual has unique something to share, and each one of us should share the light. Whether it's someone who's more intellectual, should look at someone who's emotional. And the world is made up of all sorts of people, all sorts of colors, and all sorts of shapes and sizes. The idea is that we all come together as one, as we say in this, as we say again, Hallelu es Hashem kol goyim shabchu kol olam ki gava aleinu chazde, which means that this nations of the world will come together and unite under the banner of Torah and under the banner of light. And this is happening right now as we speak in the United Nations and the special Jewish holiday of Sukkot, which represents the coming together, the bringing together in the actual four species on the particular level represents four different types of Jews. The esrog, which is the citrus, represents a Jew who has both Torah and mitzvahs. You have the lulav and the willow and the myrtle. Each one has unique. One has taste and no smell. One has smell and no taste, and one has neither. But all come together. They all have to unite to create the four species. In order to make the blessing, you cannot make the blessing on just a Jew that's perfect. You have to unite with a non-Jew, with a Jew who doesn't have anything. So it shows you that unity is about coming together. Community is about unity, about seeing all people coming together as one, and ultimately bringing about universal peace. Because peace means shalom, which means complete. Complete means that we realize that there's a bigger picture, that even the challenges is part of the challenges and the hurdles is also part of even the downfalls and the setbacks that one has to overcome on a daily basis is sometimes only there as a springboard for growth, as a springboard for further unity and further acceleration and so on. So I wanted to share with you this universal message as we come into the holiday of Sukkot, and the Sukkot is also a time when we commemorate the exodus of Egypt. But that exodus of Egypt happens every single day. Every single day we're required to look out of going out of Egypt. What does it mean, Egypt? It doesn't mean just the country, Egypt, even though we left that many years ago and we never went back. But Egypt, Mitzrayim, means the constraints. There's a comfort zone which we all operate in. And the idea is to go out of that comfort zone and to challenge ourselves to be better people and to look at the bigger picture and to realize that yes, I could do it. Yes, that this is something which we have the ability to overcome. We have the ability to overcome the challenges. We have the ability to go out of that, our limitations, our challenges that was yesterday, and to overcome it and to rise above and to reach new heights. And the greatness of yesterday, or the accomplishments of yesterday, was yesterday. Today we have to grow. Every day it says that the difference between spirituality and physical, or is by physical, everything that's in spiritual, when you have in physical, it's a negative. I'll explain to you. For instance, someone who's happy with his lot, in physical, that's the way it should be. It's a positive. Whereas in spiritual, if you're happy with your lot, with what you've achieved yesterday, that's no good. Today we have to reach new goals. Today we have to climb higher. Yesterday we did one good deed, today we have to try to do two good deeds. Whereas if yesterday we're happy with what we have what our basic needs, we should be happy and thank God for everything in the physical. In the spiritual, we have to always increase and always look for new heights and new challenges and so on. So the idea is that we all come together as one, and we realize that the peace, that the United Nations, which meeting here again to promote peace, and ultimately peace is achievable. If every single country could come to New York and go back, they should go back with this universal message of universal Nohai, the UN and the UN, to promote the universal message of peace, of unity, and ultimately we will all share under that great banner, under that great prophecy. We will all realize that great prophecy when the redemption comes, where it says, where Isaiah prophesies a time will come when swords, instruments of war, will be transformed into plowshares, instruments to provide man's sustenance, meaning instruments where people have what to eat. And today's technology, we all know that the technology is there. The ability is there to feed every single child. The ability is there that there shouldn't be any more wars. The ability, and we just have to realize that we could do it, and coming together as one. As it says, Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, God is our Lord, the Lord is one. And it says one. Why does it say one and not unity? Because that God wants us to take this diversity, this united, in meaning United Nations, we're having 70 or 196 different nations. He wants them to come together as one, to be echad, to become one. Because God had unity before He created the world. He wants the
A story for Sukkot, and it really happened over 40 years ago, and it was when Elaine and I were first married. And so for the first time I had to make a sukkah for ourselves. And I really didn't know how. First of all, at school, every single year I came bottom in the class at woodwork. Changing a light bulb was the outer limit of my practical ability. Secondly, we didn't have a car, so I had no idea how to get the materials and bring them back home. But then a friend said to me, well, I'm going tomorrow to buy some materials for the sukkah. Would you like to come with me? We can buy them together. So I said yes, and the next morning I went round to him. Well, he showed me his plans. He had actually drawn up the most elaborate architectural drawings for a sukkot fit for royalty. It was the kind of sukkah, grand, with a fine door and windows and all sorts of things, that you would be really quite happy to spend 40 years in the wilderness, and you could, as I say, entertain royalty in it. And as I say, I had no idea what to do or how to make the thing. But we went off in his car and we went to the timber yard. When we got there, he took out of his pocket a long list of precise specifications of beams and planks and hinges and screws and goodness knows what. And I really had no idea, so I ordered a few big sheets of hardboard and a few planks and a bag of nails, and that was it. We put them all in his car, we came back to our respective homes and started hammering away. The next day we visited one another to see our respective handiwork. He had indeed done a palace of a sukkah. It was grand, it was self-standing, and it was magnificent. And mine was just 3 walls of hardboard nailed together and leaning against the house. It looked like a great big cardboard box and very ungainly. But never mind, at least it satisfied the halachic requirements, and we went into Yom Tov and duly celebrated. The second night of Sukkot, there was an almighty storm and a very intense hurricane force wind. And the next morning I came into shul and he was looking very downcast. What's the matter? I said to him. My sukkah, he said, in the storm last night it blew down. Yours did too, I suppose. And with a self-deprecating smile, I said, no, actually, mine's still standing. I don't believe it, he said. I've got to come round and see. So after shul, he came back to our house and looked at our sukkah. And there it was, still standing, and he wanted to know why. And he looked carefully, and he found the answer. Because it was so unstable, I had fixed it. Friends, Sukkot, I want to share with you a journey, a long journey actually, but not a difficult one, but a really, really revelatory one as to the nature of Sukkot. And I hope you'll be able to, I'm going to go at speed. You see, we have a lot of Makorot. But I hope we'll see something really quite new. And let me share, therefore, with you the following. preparatory questions. Number one, what actually is Sukkot? Right? There is only one point in the whole of the Torah, you see it there in source 1, which actually tells you what Sukkot is all about, right? Besukkot teshvu, can you see it? Shivat yamim, live in a sukkah for 7 days, kol ezrach b'Yisrael yeshvu besukkot. Everyone born in Israel must sit in a sukkah, laman yedu dorotechem, so that your generations shall know, ki besukkot toshavti et b'nei Yisrael, that I made the Israelites live in Sukkot, botziyotam eretz Mitzrayim, when I took them out of the land of Egypt, I am the Lord your God. Now tell me, what is a sukkah? What does it symbolize? And on this, we know a famous rabbinic disagreement. You will find it in two versions in sources 2 and 3. I'll just read you the more famous one from the Babylonian Talmud. Ditanya, ki b'sukkot shavti et b'nei Israel, ananei kavod hayu divrei Rabbi Eliezer. The Sukkot represent the clouds of glory that protected the Israelites for 40 years as they wandered through the wilderness, Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. That is the view of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Akiva says, Sukkot mamash asu lahem. Actually, a sukkah is a sukkah is a sukkah. It's just literally a sukkah. That's what the Israelites lived in, and that's what it symbolizes. If you look at source 3, you'll find the same disagreement, but Mukhlefet Hashita, it's Rabbi Eliezer who says Sukkot Mamash, and Rabbi Akiva who says there were clouds of glory. Now, let me ask you a simple question. According to Rabbi Akiva, what was the miracle of Sukkot? They lived in a shed, okay? That's what Bedouin do today. We celebrate a miracle on Pesach. God took us out of Egypt from slavery to freedom. We celebrate a miracle on Shavuos. For the only time in history, God revealed himself to an entire people. What is the miracle of a garden shed unless it's me putting it up? So according to Rabbi Akiva, who said Sukkot is Sukkot Mamash, just a sukkah, what are we celebrating? That is a serious question. According to Rabbi Eliezer, who says that a sukkah represents the clouds of glory. If the sukkah really did represent the clouds of glory, what should it have said in the book, in the verse? Ki be'anan, in a cloud I led the Israelites through Egypt. That's what it says all the way through. Can you see source 4? Vayama Hashem al Moshe daber al Aaron achicha vayavo, etc., etc. Ki be'anan, I will appear in a cloud above the mercy seat. Or source 5, the cloud covered the tent of meeting and the glory of God filled the Mishkan. When the Torah wants to refer to a cloud, it refers to a cloud. Why call a cloud a sukkah? Nowhere in the whole of Torah, in the whole of Tanakh, is a cloud called a sukkah. So we have a question according to Rabbi Akiva, we have a question according to Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, number 1. Number 2, tell me something. Where in the Torah does it say the Israelites lived in Sukkot for 40 years in the wilderness? The answer, nowhere, except here. Actually, did they live in Sukkot? What did they live in? They lived in tents. You remember, the most famous of them all, source 6. There's Bilam looking out over the camp. Matavu ohalecha Yaakov mishkanosecha Yisrael. They lived in tents. They didn't live in sukkahs. A tent doesn't have a roof. You can't fulfill Sukkot by living in a tent. Okay? So how come, if it's to remind us of the Israelites in the wilderness, it tells us that they lived in Sukkot, and they nowhere else does it say they lived in Sukkot. Nowhere in the whole of Tanakh. Okay? Question number 2. Question number 3. Tell me, what is the other name for Sukkot? What do we call it? Zman Simchatenu, the festival of our joy. And the reason we call it the festival of our joy is there in 7 and 8. You'll see I put them in boldface and underlined, right? It says 3 times. How many times is Simcha mentioned in the Torah in connection with Pesach? Anyone know? 0. How many times is Simcha mentioned in connection with Shavuos? 1. How many times is it mentioned in connection with Sukkot? 3 times. Can you see? Source 7, Usmachtem lifnei Hashem Elokechem. That's in Parshas Emor, and in Dvarim it says V'samachta b'chagecha and Vayita Achsamer. That is all about Sukkot. Sukkot is called Zman Simchatenu because Simcha is mentioned 3 times in relation to Sukkot, once in relation to Shavuos, no times in relation to Pesach. Tell me, if you were to ask, and you didn't know any of this, which is the most joyous of the festivals, which would you have chosen? What? Well, Pesach, you get liberated from slavery to freedom. On that you can rejoice. Allow me to give you full permission to rejoice. I would have chosen Pesach. Or God comes down from heaven and speaks to you personally. On that I would rejoice. God forces you to live 40 years in a shed without a proper roof. On that you rejoice. Are you with me? Question 3. Why call it Zman Simchatenu? Okay, now, that's 3 questions. Question 4. If you were to choose a book out of all the Torah to read on Sukkot, which would you choose? Or maybe, let me put it the other way around. Which is the one you wouldn't choose? Kohelet, right? It's the most miserable book in the whole of Tanakh. Well, how does it begin? There it is, source 9. Havel havalim amar Kohelet, havel havalim, hakol havel. Meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless. It's meaningless, right? That cheer you up? Are you with me? Of all the books in the Torah, you shouldn't choose. It's Kohelet, okay? And what do we choose? Kohelet. That's question number 4. Now, I am going to ask you question number 5. And question number 5 will turn out to be the key that unlocks a whole series of extraordinary discoveries. Who wrote Kohelet? Shlomo Melech, right? Okay, let's have a look. Can you see source 12? The opening line of Kohelet, right? Divrei Kohelet, Ben David, Melech Birushalayim. Kohelet, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Who is that? It's Solomon. Only Solomon fits that description. Only Solomon was the son of David who ruled. Only Solomon was the one who accumulated all that wealth described. I built houses and gardens and made a fortune in real estate and all the rest of it. I was wiser than anyone else. That's Solomon, right? Does the word Solomon appear in Kohelet? No. Right. Now let me ask you, what other books did Solomon write according to tradition? What? Shir Shirim and Mishlei. Okay? Does it mention King Solomon in Shir Shirim and Mishlei? Have a look. In source 10, the opening line of Mishlei. Mishlei Shlomo ben David Melech Yisrael. Doesn't leave you in much doubt. In case you forgot it by the time you get through, it repeats it 5 times in Mishlei. Kohelet, Shir Shirim, have a look in source source 11. Shir Hashirim, Tzena Ureena Benot Zion, B'melech Shlomo, B'atara Sheitra Lo Imo B'yom Chatunato B'yom Simchat Libo. Come out, daughters of Jerusalem, and look at King Solomon with a crown which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding and the day of his rejoicing. On Mishlei it tells you King Solomon. In Shir Hashirim it tells you King Solomon. Does the word Solomon appear in Kohelet? No. Now this is peculiar. We all know it's the words of Solomon. Whether Solomon wrote it or somebody else wrote it and attributed it to him, or somebody else wrote it and about him, whatever it was, whether it was a biography, an autobiography, a ghosted autobiography, doesn't matter. We know it means Shlomo. Why call it Kohelet? A word that appears nowhere else in the whole of Tanakh. Are you with me? Why? Now this can only be one thing. If my way of reading Tanakh in general makes sense, I have argued, for instance, in my book, Not in God's Name, that very often in Torah and Tanakh, you will find beneath the surface meaning a concealed counter-narrative. There is a story beneath the story. But we always find a clue somewhere to tell us that there's more here than meets the eye. And this word Kohelet is such a clue. And what clue is it giving? Well, I'll tell you, a word very similar to Kohelet appears in the Torah. Near the end, anyone know where? There's a mitzvah, which is almost the same word. The mitzvah is called Hakhel. It's the same word, kahal, right? Means a community, kehillah. The 612th command is Hakhel, 612 out of 613. Tell me something. There it is, command in source 13. Have you got it? When did Hakhel take place? Sukkot, right? It says in source 13, Vayetzav Moshe otam lemor, and Moses commanded them, saying, Miketz sheva shanim b'moed, shnat hashmita b'chag hasukot. On Sukkot, at the end of a Shemitah year, the king is to assemble everyone in Jerusalem and teach Torah to them. That is incidentally what Kohelet does. He is makil, right at the end, he taught people Torah, and many of the commentators say that's why it was called Kohelet, because this is what he taught at Hakhel. But here is a connection between Kohelet and Sukkot. Second question, what is Solomon famous for? Apart from having a lot of wives and a lot of money and an awful lot of horses. He built the temple. When did he inaugurate the temple? What? In other words, the celebrations began a little before Sukkot. They went on through Sukkot, and B'yom HaShmini, on Shmini Atzeret, he gave people the chance to go back. Right? Have a look. Here it is. Source 14. Az, what's that word? Yakhel Shlomo. This is Kings 1, chapter 8. That's chapter which tells the story of King Solomon consecrating the temple. Then Shlomo assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the princes of the, etc., etc. Vayikalu Melech Shlomo Kol Yisrael B'Yerech HaEtanim B'Chag Hu HaChodesh HaShvi'i. On the festival of the 7th month, and the festival, the thing called Chag, in the 7th month is Sukkot. If you have a look, do you know how the Torah signifies a key word? It repeats it. How many times? Well, how many times does the word good appear in the first chapter of Bereshit? Well, how many days have we got here? 7. If you see a 7-fold repetition of a word, you know it's significant. When you go back home, have a look at 1 Kings chapter 8, and you will see it has the root kahal, vayakel, 7 times. So we've got another connection with Sukkot, and indeed with Jerusalem. Yeah? Now, there's a parasha which has that word as well, isn't there? Which parasha is it? Vayakel, right? There it is, source 15. Vayakel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Israel v'yom. What does he do in Vayakel? Tells them to build a Mishkan. Tell me, when did they start building the Mishkan? Anyone remember when Vayakel is told? The day after Yom Kippur. And you will see that they gave the gifts for it for 2 days, right? So count that. 11th of Tishrei, 2 days for the bringing of gifts, 12 and 13. When did they start building? Erev Sukkot. Yeah? So we have 3 connections between the word kahal, kohelet, and Sukkot. Now this is extraordinary. Which is the earliest connection between a festival and a Megillah? Well, which Megillah is referred to in the Mishnah and Talmudic tractate called Megillah? Purim, right? Purim, because we wouldn't have a Purim without Megillah Esther. So the earliest is probably Esther and Purim. Undoubtedly, there is an ancient connection between Eicha and Tisha B'Av. Eicha is clearly written for a moment of lamenting. So the connection historically between Kohelet and Sukkot is probably no earlier than the period of the Gaonim, 7th, 8th, 9th centuries. And yet, already when Kohelet was written, the author of Kohelet included a code word right at the beginning that points us to 3 texts, all of which have to do with Sukkot. Are you with me so far? Here is the key to the mystery. What Kohelet is telling us is that Sukkot is a commentary on Kohelet, and Kohelet is a commentary on Sukkot. As soon as you understand that, then you are going to see things you never saw before. Okay? We are seeing this extraordinary thing that Chazal recognize. They call it sometimes in halachic context, Gzera Shava. Nowadays, the posh word is intertextuality. There it is, a beautiful piece of intertextuality. In 3 different ways, Kohelet is referring to Sukkot. And that is the end of the first part of the journey. This is a 3-part journey, okay? Part 2. What is the theme of Kohelet? Well, let me ask you, what is the key word of Kohelet? What? Hevel, right? I mean, you can hardly miss it. In line 2, how many times does it appear? You see it in source 9, count them up. How many times? 5 times, right? Havel, Havalim, Amar Kohelet, Havel, Havalim, Hakol, Havel. 5 times. It appears 38 times in this tiny little book on its own, right? So now tell me, what does Hevel mean? Vanity. Do we have any advance on vanity? What? What? No. Hevel. Hevel with a hey. I'll tell you what the translations translated as: meaningless, empty, pointless, vanity, purposeless, futile, right? All of which are wrong. You will see in the Green Siddur. Sorry, I have to tell you a little story here. Does any of you remember there was a year, it must be 8 years ago, when they put on this huge exhibition in New York? They had cows everywhere, wooden cows. Were any of you in New York when they had these wooden statues of cows everywhere? Yeah? Do you remember this? Years and years ago? The day I was inducted into the House of Lords, we brought along a sandwich lunch before the induction. And where do you go to eat a sandwich in the House of Lords? It was a little garden that belonged to Black Rod. It's just, on the Thames, a little private garden. So we go in the garden and have a little sandwich, a Mazzone sandwich, in the garden of the House of Lords. And lo and behold, what do we see? We see one of these New York cows wearing ermine robes, the robes of a member of the House of Lords. I said to Elaine, I have just heard Hashem whisper to me, Umota ha'adam min ha'be'ema ayin ki hakol havel. The preeminence of man over the beast is nothing because all is vanity, okay? So I was put in my place. Think you're important to be in the House of Lords. Hashem reminds you, no, we're all just mortal, and etc., etc. So, because that line appears very early on in our morning prayers, yeah? I had to translate it for the Green Siddur. And I had to give it the correct translation. And here is the correct translation. In Hebrew, and not only in Hebrew, in ancient Greek, and I'm sure in whatever language Hindus speak. Actually, what language do Hindus speak? I don't know. Whatever they speak. Anyway, you will find that the words for soul in Judaism all have to do with breathing. Yeah? Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Vayinafash, to breathe deeply, Ruach is a wind or a gust of air. Neshiman, linshom, to inhale. Yeah? So all the words for soul in Hebrew, and Greek likewise, psyche and so on, they all have to do with breathing, and in Hinduism, you know, and Zen Buddhism and so on. Breathing is a very significant religious act. Hevel means a shallow breath. Or as I translated it in the Siddur back in 2005, a fleeting breath. And what Koheles is saying is this. We may think that I'm the greatest king in the world, the richest man in the world, I built the temple, I've accumulated all this fame, this wisdom. In the end, we're all going to die. So what's it all mean? Hakol Havel means the whole of life is a mere breath. You can have everything. Lose breath, you're dead. That's finished. That's the end. Kohelet is the most sustained exploration of mortality in all of literature. You want to read another one? It's good. It's not as good as Kohelet, but it's very good. Is to read Tolstoy's Confessions. Tolstoy was induced into the same existential despair as Kohelet. And read those Confessions and you will see. You remember that moment, that incredibly moving moment at the end of King Lear, when he suddenly discovered that Cordelia, whom he thought was, you know, the one who didn't like him, is the only one who really cared for him. And by the time he discovers it, she's dead. And he's holding her body. And he's saying, why should a dog, a horse, a rat have breath, and thou no breath at all? That is what Kohelet is saying. Everything we build up in our grandiose structures are nothing, because all we are is a mere fleeting breath. And we could die at any moment, and none of us will live forever. It is the most searching exploration of mortality known to me. Because we can accumulate huge wealth, but if we die, and we hand it on to our kids, who knows what they'll do with it? Is it good to give your kids wealth or not good? Who knows? If you have power and you die, who's going to take your place? Is he going to or she going to undo everything you fought for? You may have devoted your life to writing books. After I die, will anyone read them? Nothing has worth when we reckon the fact that we're not going to be here to see it. Now, I want to know, what did Kohelet do in this personal existential crisis? And here I have to introduce a couple of names to you. Some of them, one or other, may be familiar to you. Sigmund Freud had a brilliant disciple, an Ilui. I mean, I think in some ways as bright as Sigmund Freud himself. He was far and away Freud's most brilliant disciple. He was called Otto Rank. Does the name mean anything to you? His original name was, you guessed it, Rosenberg. But he changed it to Rank. Otto Rank was obsessed with this concept that much of human life is driven by anxiety at the fact that we're going to die. There's another Jewish guy whose name is significant here, and his name was Ernest Becker. Ernest Becker wrote a book published in 1973 called The Denial of Death, which introduced Otto Rank's ideas to the American public. The book was published in 1973. He won the Pulitzer Prize for it in 1974, and by the time he was awarded the prize, he was already dead. And he wrote this book, The Denial of Death. And what they both concluded is that fear of death leads people to do things that make them feel, I will live forever. One of those things is to accumulate great wealth and possessions. Another is to achieve great power. Another is to be very wise and write lots of books. Artistic creativity. All of this is a desire to leave something that will live on after you. The only trouble is that you won't be there to see it. And that is the theme of the opening 2 chapters of Kohelet, right? You'll see them. Can you see it? Source 16, but you'll have to turn over the page, right? That's what he says. Asiti li ganot upardesim. I made for myself gardens and orchards. Asiti li brechot mayim. I made for myself pools of water, fountains. Kaniti avadim ushvachot. I acquired many servants. Kanasti li kesef v'zahav. I accumulated wealth and gold. All of these things are classic syndromes that Otto Rank and Ernest Becker write about. They're all attempts to defeat death, right? And all of them fail. So right after all of this, he comes back, Havel Havalim Hakol Havel. Now let me ask you a simple question. If Kohelet is all about death, who was the first human being to die? Who was the first human being to die? What? What? No. His number 2 son, in English, Abel, murdered by Cain, right? What is the Hebrew for Abel? Hevel, that is the word, right? And who was he killed by? Cain. And what does Cain come from? Have a look, source 18, right? It's there in front of you, source 18. V'adam yada et Chava ishto. Adam knew Eve, his wife, that is knowing, as they say in the biblical sense. V'tahar, and she became pregnant. V'tered et Cain, and she gave birth to Cain. V'tomer, kaniti ish et Hashem. I have acquired a child together with God. Kaniti, I have acquired. That's why she called him Cain. What did Solomon just say above there? So Zion? Kaniti, right? The word kaniti only appears 6 times in the whole of Tanakh. 3 of them in the book of Ruth. Okay? Kaniti. And now you understand the drama of Cain and Abel. Is this drama? You know, people say, everyone knows Cain and Abel is a symbolic story. They were real, but they represented something conceptual. People say it's the old conflict between the farmer and the herdsman. But, in fact, Cain and Abel are a metaphysical drama on death, life, the fragility of life, and the attempt to defeat death by acquisition. And that is the drama that Solomon goes through. He attempts to defeat death by kaniti, by acquiring things, and realizes it's all in vain, because those things will live on after me, but I won't. Right. Now, what is the halachic definition? Oh, sorry, what is the solution King Solomon comes up with in Kohelet? He eventually finds an answer. Does anyone know what it is? Pardon? No, I mean before the last verse. He gets there quite early on. Okay, I'm going to give you a clue. Tell me, the word simcha, right? Joy. The root samach, in some form or another. How many times does the word simcha appear in the book of Bereshit? Have a guess. 1. How many times in the book of Shmot? Have a guess. 1. How many times in the book of Vayikra? 1. How many times in the book of Bamidbar? 1. How many times in the book of Devarim? 12. Quite a lot, okay? We had some of them, yes, in Kitavo, right? V'samachta v'chalatov, tachad Hashem, lo avadata es Hashem elokecha b'simcha. Sorry, how many does that make up? I've lost count here. 16. How many times do you think the word simcha appears in Kohelet? 17.
the book we think is the most miserable of the lot, has more simcha in it than all 5 books of the Torah together. And that is the answer. And I have to tell you something. What is the Hebrew for happiness? Come on, it's the first word of the book of the Psalms. Ashrei. Ashrei, right? Ashrei, Ashrei, Kachalo. Ashrei, Yishvevetecha. Ashrei. Judaism is interested in happiness. It loves it. But what Judaism really cares about is simcha. What's the difference between happiness and joy? We have a wonderful philosopher in our midst, and I would say happiness is something philosophers aspire to, at least if they're Aristotle. Eudaimonia, okay? Happiness involves a life taken as a whole. Solon said, call no man happy until he's dead. In other words, it didn't mean you suddenly cheer up when you die. He meant judge a person by the whole of their life. Is simcha about a lifetime? No. Simcha is about now. Simcha lives in the moment. And that is why you can feel simcha, even in the midst of terrible, bad things happening. You ever been to an Israeli wedding when bad things are happening? I have to tell you, we were there during the Gulf War. We were there in 2002 when all the suicide bombings took place. You go to an Israeli wedding, then you will see the most magnificent simcha. Because simcha is not stepping back and saying, am I happy with life as a whole? Simcha lives in the moment. And that is why simcha is William Blake saying, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Or what some rather best-selling Buddhist writer calls the power of now. That is what simcha is about. And so Solomon finally realized, I'm not going to defeat death by accumulating lots of property and wealth and wisdom and writing books, because that's life as a whole and we never live to see all of this. But I can defeat death by simcha. By rejoicing in the wife that I love, he says. By enjoying today and not worrying about tomorrow. Eat and drink because tomorrow we die. Live in the moment, he says, and have simcha. And that is how Kohelet finally conquered his obsession with death. He learned to rejoice. Don't worry about tomorrow. Just thank God for now. And that is what he did. Now, what is the halachic definition of a sukkah? Somebody must know this. What is it, the halachic definition of a sukkah? It is a dirat arai. It's a temporary dwelling, right? What obsesses King Solomon about the human body? It's a temporary dwelling. That is what obsesses him. It's not permanent. A human life is like a sukkah. It's not like a palace made of stone. It's a temporary dwelling. And what allows us to overcome our anxiety and insecurity, the fact that all we have is a temporary dwelling? Simcha. That is why Sukkot is Zman Simchatenu. And that is what Kohelet is telling us about Sukkot. Okay? And that, I think, is the end of part 2. Sukkot is about knowing that life is insecure. You know, we had a whole bunch of people who said, you can securitize risk. You remember that one? Subprime mortgages, all that stuff. You saw The Big Short? You know what I'm talking about. The truth is, you can't securitize risk. Life is a risk, and it is hazardous. And that robs you of all the joy, because you can never know, am I going to be here tomorrow? How do you deal with that? The answer is, V'samachta b'chagecha v'yitach samech. You sit in a rackety old building, open to the wind, the rain, the cold, and the storm, and you rejoice. That is how you solve Solomon's problem, and that is what Sukkot is all about.
And that, I think, is the end of the second part of the journey. Now, I want to ask you a simple question. King Solomon built the temple. Was that a good thing or not a good thing? Well, it must have been a good thing. It was the greatest thing ever, right? Were there some downsides to it? Were there some downsides to building the temple? Okay, have a look at source 19, right? Here you are. The beginning of the story of the building of the temple, 1 Kings chapter 5. Can you see what it says? King Solomon conscripted laborers from all Israel, 30,000 men. He sent them off to Lebanon in shifts of 10,000 a month. So they spent 1 month in Lebanon, 2 months at home. Solomon had 70,000 carriers and 80,000 stone cutters in the hills, as well as 3,300 foremen who supervised. How many people did he have building the temple? Can you do your arithmetic? A lot, exactly so. Precisely so, 183,000 and some. Okay? Does that remind you of anything? When was the last time you heard about the Israelites being turned into a labor force? Correct. Hang on, we were supposed to leave Egypt, right? Solomon seems to have taken the people back into slavery. Now, have a look here at source 20, right? Can you see that? All the people who were left of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, who were not of the people of Israel, these Solomon drafted to be slaves, and so they are to this day. But the people of Israel, Solomon, made no slaves. Can you read that? The Torah has to tell us King Solomon didn't make the Israelites slaves. That's quite striking, I think, is it not? Tell me, how long did it take? How long does it take to build a house in Hampstead Garden suburb? How long did it take Solomon to build the temple? Anyone know? Have a look. Source 21. In the 4th year, the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid in the month of Ziv, and in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the 8th month, the house was finished in all its parts according to all its specifications. He was 7 years in building it. It took him 7 years to build the temple, okay? Now look at the very next verse in Tanakh. Can you see it? Solomon was building his own house 13 years. Is that telling you something? He spent almost twice as long building his own palace as he spent building a house for God. So the temple was a wonderful, wonderful thing, the greatest thing ever, but it practically reduced the whole of the Israelites to slavery. So that the Torah has to tell us, well, he didn't actually make them into slaves, because at the end of 7 years they could go free. And he spent twice as long building a house for himself as he spent building a house for God. That is a bit of a critique here. Right? Now, do you remember what God said to David when David said, I've got to build a temple for God? Anyone know what God said? Have a look. Source 23, I've given it to you in the Hebrew and the English. We'll read it. In the English, Solomon says to the prophet Nathan, I want to build a house for God. Nathan says, that's a great idea, go ahead and do it. But then we read, but that night the word of the Lord came to Nathan. Go and tell my servant David, thus says the Lord, would you build me a house to dwell in? I haven't lived in a house since the day I brought up the people from Egypt to this day. I've been moving about in a tent for my dwelling. In all the places I've moved with the people of Israel. Did I speak a word about any of the judges of Israel whom I commanded to shepherd my people, saying, why haven't you built me a house of cedar? I don't want a house. I'm happy with a tent. So we see that there is an undercurrent here. It's not the primary meaning. The Beit HaMikdash was the holiest thing ever. But there's an undercurrent here. That God didn't want this kind of palace. That it would turn the Israelites into a corvée, a nation of slave laborers. That it would be like every other nation and every other nation in the ancient world, the modern world, and everything in between. You want to announce, I'm great? You build monumental buildings. Everyone did it. Every single nation there ever was. And God is saying to David, you think I'm like that? Did I ever ask for such a thing? I was happy with a tent. What was the name of that tent, by the way? It's called the Mishkan. Incidentally, how do English Bibles translate the word Mishkan? Anyone know? Tabernacle. That remind you of something? Are you with me? So, as house is to sukkah, so mikdash is to mishkan, as temple is to tabernacle. Right? Now I asked you a simple question. Who lived in a sukkah in the Torah? The Israelites never. But what is the root of the word sukkah? Anyone know? What do we call the roof of a sukkah? Schach. The root of sukkah is schach. Does that word appear anywhere in the Torah? The answer is yes, it appears twice. In which context? Anyone know? In the Mishkan. Right? There it is. Source 24. Vahiu hakruvim. The cherubs. Above the Aron, right? The cherubs. Porsei knafayim lamala. They spread their hands over them. Sochachim bekanfehem al hakaporet. They were overshadowing, they were protecting, they were shadowing the kaporet. Uvnehem ish el achiv el kaporet. And they were the cherubs were facing one another. Right? So and that is in Parashas Truma, in which we have the command to build the Mishkan, and the same sentence appears, the same words appear in Parashas Vayakel when they actually made the sukkah. The only context in which schach appears in the Torah is in relation to the Mishkan. There is a place where, I'm not sure if it's the temple. I'm not sure if it's the temple. None of the commentators are sure in the temple. But does anyone know what harachamon we say in benching on Chol HaMoed Sukkot? Yokim lanu et Sukkot David Hanofalet, right? You will see that is a quote from Amos in source 26. Can you see it? Bayom hahu akim et Sukkot David Hanofalet. I will restore the sukkah of David that has fallen down. And remember what God said to David. I prefer living in a tent than a palace, than a house of cedar. Now I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Which of the patriarchs lived in a house? Did Abraham live in a house? No, he lived in a tent. Did Isaac live in a house? No, he lived in a tent. You know who lived in houses? Have a look. Source 27. Bereshit 19. You remember 2 angels come to Lot in Sodom. Vayomer hinei na Adonai sirana el beit avdeichem. Lot lives in a house. Abraham lives in a tent. You know who else lives in a tent, in a house? Look at source 28. Vayomer bat mi'at hagidi na'ali hayesh beit avicha makom lanu lalun. Abraham's servant gone to find a wife for Isaac. Who lives in a house? Lavan. Okay, Lavan lives in a house. Lot lives in a house. Is that a good advertisement for a house? Not really. Okay, Abraham lives in a tent. Isaac lives in a tent. Who is the first patriarch who builds a house? Here is the verse. Can you see it? Source 29. Now listen. This has to be one of the strangest verses in the whole of the Torah. Listen carefully. Can you see it? Source 29. Yaakov nasa Sukkota. And Jacob traveled to Sukkot. Vayiven lo bayit. And he made for himself a house. The first patriarch to make for himself a house. Ulamiknehu asa Sukkot. But for his cattle, he made Sukkot. And he is about to celebrate the fact that he's the first patriarch to build a house. What do you think he's going to call the place? Beit something or other, right? Beit El, Beit Lechem, you name it.
What does he call the place? Al Kain Kara Shem HaMakom Sukkot. There you are. You just bought a house in Hampstead Garden suburb and you name it after your garage. I mean, have you ever seen anything more extraordinary? And what is Jacob telling us for all time? Jews don't have to live in houses to feel secure. I'm happy to live in Sukkot. My animals live in Sukkot. I'm happy to live there. What does God say in Parshas Bahar? When you come to the land, you will never own it in perpetuity. Why? Ki li haaretz ki gerim v'toshavim atem imadi. You are mere strangers and temporary residents as far as I'm concerned. In other words, even though you live safely in the land of Israel, never forget where you came from. Never so settled down that you become complacent. V'ram levavacha v'shachachta, so that your heart is upraised and you forget where you came from and who you owe this to. Never forget, in the immortal words of the Beatles' last recording, get back to where you once belonged. So just as, even in Israel, they were supposed to remember the 40 years wandering in the desert, now you begin to see this extraordinary thing, that just as, even though they are worshipping in the temple Solomon built, don't forget how you first once had God living in your midst, in a sukkah, called the Mishkan, called the tabernacle. You do not need great buildings of cedar and stone to find God. You can live in a little Mishkan, a porter cabin, courtesy of IKEA, I have to tell you. And still God will be there. If, of course, you're like the Keruvim, whose face was Israel Re'ehu. You turn face to face to your human being. That is where the Shekhinah lives. You remember where the Keruvim were facing in Solomon's temple? They were not facing one another. They were facing Panehem El Abayit. They were facing the house. They weren't looking at each other. The Gemara in Baba Batra, Daf Tzadites Amud Aleph, says, when Israel do the will of God, the cherubs face each other. When they don't do the will of God, they face the Bayit. That is an extraordinary Gemara. It's telling us that the Mishkan was closer to what Hashem wanted than Solomon's temple. And what Sukkot is telling us is, Sukkot is when the Israelites went to the temple and celebrated the produce of the fields, and they thanked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but they never forgot where they came from. Because every time a nation forgets its youth, its childhood, the hard times they had when they were struggling to make it go, they become decadent and they eventually decline and fall. But Jews never are allowed to do that. Because it's enough that you're Gerim and Toshavim, that you're temporary residents, and you're always asking me for another year of life. And it's enough. Don't think you've got a great big temple. I'm as good as the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians. I tell you, I'm good enough with a Mishkan. Because that is the Sukkah. That's the Schach. That memory of the Mishkan is good enough for me. And we now understand exactly the argument with which I began, which is Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer. What is a sukkah? Rabbi Akiva is right. A sukkah was a sukkah mamash, not a hut the Israelites lived in, but the Mishkan, the portable temporary dwelling that God dwelled in. And Rabbi Eliezer was right when he said Ananei Kavod, because where were the Ananei Kavod? Do you think they covered the people? If you look in the Torah, you will see they covered the Mishkan. As long as they were encamped, the cloud was over the Mishkan. When it moved beyond the Mishkan, they knew it was time to travel on. The Mishkan was a temporary dwelling. But the odd thing is that the temple was a permanent dwelling, and yet it was destroyed twice, and we don't have it anymore. But the Mishkan, which could move anywhere because God is everywhere, became the symbol of the shul that you can build in Jerusalem, but also, not bad, in Hampstead Garden suburb. That became the permanent symbol. The temporary became permanent, and the permanent turned out only to be temporary. Ki b'Sukkot hoshavti et b'nei Yisrael. When I brought them out of Israel, Egypt, it wasn't the Israelites who lived in a sukkah, it was God who lived in a sukkah. And the sukkah is telling us something absolutely unbelievable. That you don't need to have mega bucks to buy a home for God. All you need is a garden shed and a bit of faith. And you have your schach, and they overshadow you the way the cherubs overshadowed the ark. And between the cheruvim is the clouds of glory. The simplest, poorest Jew who turns his face to his brother or sister and builds a little sukkah is bathed in clouds of glory. And he has built his own private equivalent of the Mishkan. I hope we have seen in this little journey through the sources aspects of Sukkot and Kohelet that we never saw before. But the basic moral is very profound. That even though the world sometimes seems very dark and full of danger, and even though we all worry, how is my health going to be? Is God going to write me in the book of life? How long do I have left? Sukkot says no. You can experience eternity in a moment. All you have to do is celebrate. B'simcha.
This is a very special time of the year, Sukkot, and I would like to chat with you just for the next few minutes about the idea of
חג הסוכות הוא מסמל לנו תהליך מאוד פשוט ומאוד יפה, שאנחנו לוקחים פסולת גורן ויקב, דברים בזויים בעצם אין בהם שום דבר, זורקים אותם, שורפים אותם ומעלים אותם מעל הראש שלנו כדבר הכי חשוב. מה זה פסולת גורן ויקב? מידת ההשפעה, מידת האהבה, מידת החיבור בינינו, וזה מה שחג הסוכות דורש מאיתנו. שאנחנו נעלה את החשיבות של חיבור ואהבה למעלה מראשינו, ויבנה סוכת שלום, וכל העולם ייכנס תחת הסכך הזה הגדול, וכולנו יחד נהיה כאגודה אחת. זה מה שמסמל לנו חג הסוכות. אז נזכה למצב שהוא באמת כולו סוכה גדולה, סוכת שלום. חג סוכות שמח.
Holiday of Sukkot, the time of our joy. And yet, interestingly enough, Vilna Gaon, one of the greatest sages of Jewish people, said that this is one of the most difficult holidays that there is. Why is that? Because it's the time of our happiness. Vilna Gaon says the Torah commands us to be happy, and we have to be happy for 7 days every second. So we can ask a question, how can Torah command us to be happy? That means we have to learn something about emotional states. But first, let's ask the question, what is this state of happiness? And again, our sages indicate as unlike other states, for example, a joy, something that comes when we hear a good news, the state of happiness is a constant state. It's something that person should be, it's a state that a person should be in all the time. Now, the constant happiness can only be if we rely on something constant. And here we see logically that everything in this world is changing. Everything comes and goes except for one thing, is God, presence of God, God's love to us, God's care for us. So if we really can feel God's love, can really integrate it and feel it all the time, then we can really feel happy all the time. And that's what Chazanish, one of the greatest Jewish sages, says, that when you feel God's presence, when you focus on God's presence, you immediately feel this state of happiness. But again, you realize that this is not something that we experience immediately and all the time, like Vilna Gaon every second, but we can learn how to do it. And so how can we do it? The first of all is to change our attitude. What do I mean by change of attitude? Well, you know, when we prepare for a greatest holiday, the whole year you wanted to go to some tropical island, and you're thinking about it, you're preparing it. So one of the attitudes that you take, that anything going to happen during my holiday is not going to bother me. So things normally that would annoy you or bother you, make you irritated, when it comes into holiday, you say, no. So wait a minute, this is my holiday. I'm not letting those things bother me. Whatever it's weather, whatever it's something happened, okay, we're going to talk to friends and say, you know, we went to this beautiful island, and instead of this and this happened. So that becomes part of the adventure, if you wish. So that's the same thing is with Sukkot. Sukkot is a 7-day trip, if you wish, to the island of happiness. The 7th day into a very special spiritual island where we learn about happiness. So if we will change our attitude and we'll look at the holiday of Sukkot like this, then our whole week is going to be differently. We'll look at these things differently. We don't allow things to bother us because that's what God asks us to do. So that's one practical advice for preparation for the holiday of Sukkot. And another thing, that we have instruments that help us, and one of them is Sukkah, is a temporary dwelling. What is the Sukkah telling us? The Sukkah telling us, leave materialism. Not material world, because the Sukkah itself have to be built by our hands. We can't use nature for the Sukkah, but the roof is open to the universe. So leaving the material world. Why? Because you see, if we attach our happiness to materiality, that between those things that we lost and we feel sorry for, the things we worry about losing, and worrying about future, we never can be happy. Now, once we attach our happiness to, as I said, one constant presence of God, and realizing that He loves us, and this love is going to be infinite, then we can leave sort of things, the whole notion of materialism, and look with wonder and sometimes with great interest, you know, how the material world is changing and what's happening in this material world that's constantly changing. Realizing that since it doesn't attach to our essence, and it's the only reason it's there is really to help us grow, to help us to become greater people, then our whole attitudes to what's happening in the material world is also changed. So our sages tell us that going back to the Sukkah and sitting in the Sukkah properly is going back to Gan Eden, going to the Garden of Eden. That's the energy of the Sukkah. And because we are in the Garden of Eden, so the people who live in Garden of Eden, they come to visit us. And the first day is Abraham, the second day Yitzchak and Yaakov, and so on. So, but apart from just having them as a guest, you know that our forefathers represent the state of consciousness, the archetypes. Avraham is chesed, is kindness. Yitzchak is gvura, is properly put borders. Yaakov is tiferet, beauty. So what does it teach us? It teaches that every day of the Sukkot is imbued with a special holiness, and it's in a different energy. So the first day, the day of Avraham, when Avraham Avinu comes down, it means that this day is full of energy of kindness, of chesed. So how can we use it? We can feel happiness by doing acts of kindness. We become godlike, and therefore we're close to God because we're godlike through the act of kindness. The second day, we can enjoy millions and millions, properly put borders, whatever is the borders of our sukkah, whatever is the borders of our body, whatever is the border of proper relationship. Sometimes by not talking and allowing somebody else to talk, we take this opportunity of wishing everyone a wonderful, good, happy, sweet New Year, coming now from the holiday of Yom Kippur.
My name is Shimon Kalyakov, and my brother Ruven Kalyakov is here as well. We're the founders and directors of TorahAnytime.com. And thank you. And congratulations for making it out here. We're so excited to have this event. And it's called Back to Our Jewish Origin. Before we begin, I just want to give a few shout outs, a few recognitions to some very, very important people that helped make this, helped in making this event happen. And we just want to start off with one of the sponsors asked us to mention a refuah shalema, a speedy recovery to Yaakov Yisrael ben Rosa. He should have a refuah shalema. Also, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank Benny Aminov. He's the one who originated this event. Yeah, that's him right there. And not only Benny, but also his wonderful family is here as well. And it's in, yeah, give him a hand, yeah. And it's really interesting because we go back way, way, way back, maybe 20 years ago. We grew up in a place called Pamanak. And it's amazing how we go, you know, after 20 years almost not seeing each other, we're back together doing amazing things. So, congratulations. Also, are you guys enjoying the food over here? Yeah, give them a hand. Oligarch Restaurant, absolutely amazing. Doing an amazing job. Food is really, really good. Thank you guys. They gave us a really amazing deal. Thank you very much to this amazing restaurant. Also, one of the sponsors, Mark Matato from Bracha Design. They did all the graphics. These guys are amazing. When Rabbi Mizrahi saw the flyer for this event, he said, wow, this is an amazing flyer. So you got the endorsement from Rabbi Mizrahi. So please, if you guys need any services from Mark, he's over here. Mark, raise your hand, right there. Excellent. Also, Alex Matato was helping us a lot all the way from Miami. He's not here with us right now, but he was really helping a lot with a lot of advice and a lot of good information. So thank you to Alex, watching this on Torah Anytime, I'm sure. Okay. Also, a big, big thank you to our amazing... You guys like the music? The music? Yeah. Absolutely. DJ MRM, Moshe Masri, all the way from Muncie. Coming here for this amazing event. Thank you very much, DJ. You're amazing. Give him a hand, guys. Also, one of the sponsors, the company I work with, Kangen Water. If anyone is into very healthy water, please see me. I'll be more than happy to educate you and tell you what that's all about. Big shout out to my wife, Golda. She's over here. Always supporting, and also my brother's wife, Miriam, always supporting us to spread more Torah, spread more Torah. So, Baruch Hashem to the ladies. Also, most important, of course, to thank Hashem. Thank Hashem for, Guys, in 2 days we have Yom Kippur, biggest day of the year. I'm sure the rabbi's going to talk about it, but just a big appreciation for putting us in this amazing community with wonderful people. Okay, so now, let's bring up the main attraction over here. I just wanted to tell you that our guest speaker, Rabbi Yossi Mizrahi, you see, about 15 years ago, 16 years ago, I was very confused. I don't know about you, but I was very confused. I wasn't sure what's going on. Is there a God? Was the Torah written by man, by God? Is it true? What happens after we die? I was confused. But one of the things that gave me so much clarity, that gave me an understanding, was lectures of Rabbi Yossi Mizrahi. As a matter of fact, my brother and I were so inspired by these lectures that the rabbi gave, that we said to ourselves, if this has such an impact in us and gives us so much meaning and purpose in life, I'm sure there's other people out there that could also use this meaning and purpose that don't know about this. And that was one of our inspirations to start Torah Anytime, thanks to Rabbi Mizrahi. He was our first speaker on the website, the very first speaker. And it's an amazing revolution. So in front of everybody, Rabbi Mizrahi, in front of Torah Anytime, I just wanted to publicly thank you for the incredible impact you had on me and my family and the entire community. There's almost not a person that I meet that wasn't impacted positively by Rabbi Yossi Mizrahi. So it is my complete pleasure, my complete merit. I can't believe even I'm doing this, because this is somebody I look up to so much. And you guys, I don't know if you realize how fortunate you are to hear what this person is going to tell you, but this very well could be a very, very big turning point, a life-changing event for everyone. I'd like to bring up my good friend, Rabbi Yossi Mizrahi.
Shimon. We are now, Baruch Hashem, 48 hours before Yom Kippur. We're between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And if we review the Jewish nation in the world, the numbers comes to 14 million and change. Between 14 and 15 million Jews in the world. The world has 7.5 billion non-Jews, Gentiles. The number of Jewish people in the world is not even 1%. Yet, if you check the history, the Jewish people started in the same generation like the Chinese people, 4,200 years ago. After the flood of Noah, the world just got restarted. 8 people became 7.5 billion people after 4,200 years. The interesting part is that if you check the genealogy of all the families, you'll find that the Chinese, the Sini, in Hebrew, Chinese means Sini, Sin, China. The Chinese was a nephew of Shem. The Jews came from Shem. Someone who does not like Jews, they call him anti-Semite, because we are the race that came from Sem, the righteous son of Noah. And then he had 2 other sons that also had many children, the Greeks, the Chinese, and many other families, Cyprus. They all became nations. The Chinese people are close to 2 billion people with restriction on birth. The Jewish people never had any restriction on birth. It wasn't a part of their growing up in history. The interesting part that we have to ask, how is it possible that the Jewish people are not even 1% of the amount of the Chinese people? The answer is that the Jewish people, by choice, decided to marry people from all the nations throughout the generation, what we call intermarriage. And after a few generations, almost all of them were gone, and they lost their Jewish identity. That's one of the main reasons today that we only have less than 15 million people in the world. We should have been more than 2 billion people today. Easy. If the Chinese are close to 2 billion, we should have been a lot more. In reality, we are not even 1% of what we should have been. What is the reason that so many Jewish people chose to leave Judaism with no fear, with no shame, with no regret, until all their children basically grew up like non-Jews? They don't even know, some of them, that they are Jewish. The question we have to ask is, why people do so many things against religion? Why so many people question many things about religion? Why so many people choose to fight against religion? Why so many people have no idea what's written in a religion? The answer to all these questions tonight, unfortunately, is, if I will ask you today, what is the biggest enemy of the human being? The biggest enemy in life? Some people would say, disease, cancer. Some people would say, not to get married. Some people would say, not to have children. Some people would say, to lose all your money. Some people would say, to die young. Some people would say, to be mentally sick. Everyone will find something that he's scared of the most and will define it as the biggest enemy of his life. The answer is that none of the above comes even near the real answer. Who thinks he knows what is the biggest enemy and biggest threat to the life of the human being on this earth? We are here 70, 80, 90 years and we're all gone. Some of us don't even make it to 70. None of us know what's next. Just today they stabbed one person, American Jew, in Israel, very young. That's it. He never dreamed in the morning when he woke up that today is his last day. From Rosh Hashanah until now, I have more than 7 people that passed. All of them are young. I'm sure on Rosh Hashanah, when they're standing in a synagogue, those who went to synagogue did not dream that in a few days their life will be over. One way or the other, even if we live long life, it won't be most likely more than 100 years. Compared to history, it's not even a drop in the ocean. So the question that I have is, what is the biggest enemy in a person's life? Who knows? What do you think is the answer? Very good. The answer is ignorance. Ignorance is a very dangerous risk to the person's life. Before I even speak about religion, I'm talking about everyday life. If you don't know accounting, if you're an accountant and you don't know they change one rule, the IRS changed only one rule, that can cost your company millions of dollars. You did not know about it, they rejected your tax return, you just lost a few $1 million, not knowing that they made one change in the beginning of the year. It happens to someone I know, he lost $2 million because they changed the rules. Ignorance can be in medicine. You're drinking a drink, not knowing it causing cancer. After 10 years, you die young. What caused you to die? Ignorance about health. Ignorance in marriage. Most husbands never ever learned what does it mean to be a husband before they got married. That's why the divorce rate is already more than 70%. And the 30% who are not getting divorced are not exactly happy. So what's going on? Something is not working. Same thing when it comes to wives. Just as bad. So ignorance, before you come into a partnership of a man and a woman not knowing what it is, the chance to succeed is close to zero. In business, ignorance in business, in sales, in relationship, in raising children, in so many different things, in computers. If you don't know computers, you're wasting hours every day. You don't know there are shortcuts, you're working 10 times more. But none of the above come to the main ignorance that I'm about to talk about. What is the ignorance that is the most dangerous in a person's life? That a person would live in this planet for so many years and not 1 minute of his life he even knows what's the purpose of him being here. He never ever learned what is the purpose of my creation. What is the purpose of the creation of the world? Who is my creator? Why did he create me? Why did he make me a man or a woman? Why did he make me with this kind of look? Why did he make me come in this country? Why was I born to this family? Why this woman is my wife? Why these souls became my children? Why did I ended up being a barber and my brother became a doctor? So many things in life that a person has no idea what's going on. I see some Bukharians are smiling. Yeah. I should have been more sensitive, I'm sorry. But by the way, today barbers make more than doctors, thanks to Obama. Should send him a thank you card. But one way or the other, there are so many important questions in life that a person has no idea what's going on. Now, do you think it's possible for a person to fulfill his mission in life not even knowing one answer from all these questions that I ask? Is it possible that a person one day will die and get the shock of his life? He will be devastated. He will stand in front of his Creator, just like the Torah described, and he will have a trial for his entire life. Every detail, every beep that came out of his mouth, every memory, every thought, every move, everything is going to be analyzed from A to Z with the depth of your thoughts, your intention, everything behind it. Everything will be analyzed, 90 years of life to the seconds. without any exclusions, by then it will be very difficult to fix your situation. Because if you show up to the trial when you just found out 2 minutes before the trial that you have a trial, I don't have to tell you what's going to be the outcome. But if you knew about your trial a year in advance, you had plenty of time to prepare. Prepare your homework, your receipts, the right lawyer, the right witnesses, the alibi, everything that you needed to come to be able to save your life. If you just found out a minute before your trial that you're about to be judged and your entire life is on the line, and you just found out, what exactly are you going to do about it? By then everybody understands it's too late. The reason of this event is to do what we did, Baruch Hashem, thousands of times in the last 24 years. When I started to work with the community in Queens and in Brooklyn and Long Island and other places 24 years ago, there are not that many people who were Torah observant. I remember meeting young guys in the parks from the public school, have no idea what Judaism is. They grew up like non-Jews. Nobody ever taught them religion. And I had to start with them from step one, proving to them there is a God. Proving to them that the Torah is the only divine book that was given ever to humanity. Teaching them what's the purpose of giving the Torah to the Jewish people. What's the purpose of the creation of the world? Why God needs to create people and put them here? What is the difference between the body and the soul? How does it work together? A body that is 100% material and a soul that is 100% divine together combined in one unit. What's gonna be when we leave this world? The afterlife. Where are we going? What's going to be with the body? What's going to be with the soul? Teaching them what does it mean reincarnations, that the soul move from one body to another and come back to the world in a different city or in a different country, different language, different accent, different name, different sex. There's so many things. I'm sure everything I mentioned so far, all of you, regardless of religious or not religious, all of you thinking about these things. I'm sure you're thinking why God made me this way, why He put me in this city, why I was born to this family, why I look like this, why I'm rich and my friend is poor or the other way around, why I cannot get married, why I got divorced so many times, why I don't have success with my children, why I'm always sad and upset, why I always lose money, and many other questions. It all comes down to one root. If you locate the root of the problem, everything else in life will be crystal clear. Once your life will be clear, you know what you're doing here, you know what's the purpose, everything in life is changing. Because even when you go through hard time and suffering and there's some things in life that you cannot overcome, you know that this world is only a hallway to the real world. Once we go to the next world, which is eternal, no one will remember this life, no one will care about what I left here. Life over here, the Gemara say, it's a blink of the eye. In 1 second it's all over. Even though it's 90 years, compared to eternity, everybody understands it's nothing. I would like to start by making few logical steps. Anyone who disagree with me, or anyone who did not understand what I say, please raise your hand and stop me right there, because I want everyone to be in the same level here. Step number one. Before I speak about religion, before I speak about Judaism, before I speak about the purpose of life, first question, I have to prove God exists. That's first question, because if I cannot prove God exists, what's the point of talking about books? First, I have to prove that God exists. Now, I have a problem. I have a technical problem. I know whoever created me. Remember, we're starting now like atheists, ignorant people with no religion, no faith. We never learn about religion. Our knowledge in religion and philosophy is zero. But we have common sense. And we're going to use our common sense together, and I will show you how easy It is to know everything 100%, not to believe. Believing means not knowing. I'm talking about 100% knowledge. Just like we all know we're sitting in this beautiful fancy restaurant tonight on a Sunday night and we're listening to a lecture, that's knowledge, that's not a belief. If someone will ask you tomorrow, where were you last night? You won't answer, I believe I was in that restaurant in Queens. No, you would say clearly, that's where I was. 100% knowledge. It's very easy to know God exists, and it's very easy to know the Torah is His book. And it's very easy to prove that any other religion that came after the Torah, it's all fake. These three, it takes me maximum half an hour to prove. Maximum. But since we don't have a lot of time tonight, I will only give you a little taste of everything. But I understand that you're going to receive tonight, or each one of you, few of my CDs. One of them is Torah and Science, is a 4 hours seminary that after you watch it, you will never, ever have any doubt about all the questions I mentioned. Never. It was translated to 9 different languages. The reason it was translated to many languages, even by Gentiles, is because once you watch it, everything that you had a doubt about, the doubt is gone. And then you have also a CD, which is a combination of 30 hours of audio lectures, which is very, very important and crucial to the person's life. And there's other CDs over there, and some of them also in Russian, for people who does not speak English so well. Please take advantage on it. Use these CDs, it's right there. Also, if you'll be interested, after the CDs are free, if you'll be interested to purchase books, I bought a very important book of Rabbi Zamir Cohen in English, The Revelations, very, very recommended. You can purchase the book. And I have my book, it's only in Hebrew yet. Maybe in a month, Be'ezrat Hashem will be in English as well. But right now, only the Hebrew version is available for purchase. Let's move on. Step number 1. If there is a creation, that means there is a creator. We never find anything that was created by a random explosion. If you look at this microphone, and I can swear that someone made it, even though I was not there to witness it. But if someone will come to me and say this microphone was made by a random explosion, immediately I would run away from him or call 911. Because I would know this person is not normal. You agree with me on that or no? Anybody thinks that a microphone was made by a random explosion? Why you don't believe that the microphone was made by a random explosion? Because there is a design in it. There is intelligence in it. It's symmetric, it's equal, it's round. There is a lot of things who gather together in a perfect match to create such a beautiful thing. Laptop, even more sophisticated. All these video cameras, everything that we see around us, once we see something that was made with intelligence, we know right away someone made it. It was not made by itself. So far, everyone agree with me on that? Thank you. Let's move on. Second step. The more advanced and the more sophisticated is the creation, it indicates about the brilliance and the ability of the creator. For instance, to make a chair, 1 day of training, it's enough. To make a laptop, you need probably a month of training or more. Why? It's much more sophisticated. To make a satellite, you need years of experience and learning. So the more advanced and sophisticated is the creation, it's teaching me about the ability of the creator. I am much more impressed by Mr. Ichigawa from Japan, who made the Sony camera, than Ahmed from Egypt that made the chair. Why? Because the chair I can also do. I learned 1 day by Ahmed, he teach me how to make a chair, and I know how to make a chair. But to learn how to make a video camera will probably take me months. Why? Because it's much more sophisticated. Everyone understands step number 2? The more sophisticated is the creation, it indicates about the ability of the creator. Step number 3. Did we ever find any creation that was made by someone without a purpose? One thing in a whole world. Chair. You come to the person that made the chair. Excuse me, why did you make the chair? I really don't know. Excuse me, why did you make the microphone? I have no idea. I was bored. Hey, excuse me, why did you make this laptop? I really don't know. Did it ever happen to you? Not only everything that was made with a purpose, everything that was ever made comes with instructions, a manual, how to use it. If you do not learn the manual how to use your laptop, you don't even take advantage of 5% of the ability of the machine. There's so many functions over there that you will never know without reading the instructions. Everybody understand that? So the step number 3, we never found anything that was made without a purpose. Step number 4, someone made us. We are the most advanced machine in the whole world. The brain of one human being is more sophisticated than the entire internet and telephone and cellular system of the entire world multiplied by 100. I will repeat. If you take all the wires on the entire world with the satellites, with all the landlines and all the cellular phones and all the internet lines, everything of the entire world does not come to 1% of a brain of one human being. How many people you have in the world today? 7.5 billion. From one drop, here you go, one drop of liquid, right? One drop of liquid goes into the woman's body, and 9 months later a baby comes with eyes, with brain, with the entire system. Everything was made from nothing. There was no bones, there were no nothing. Everything was made, millions and millions of miracles gathered together in a perfect timing to create such a sophisticated machine. But it's not just a material machine. It's a combination of material and spiritual. That means this baby has feelings, and he knows things, and he has a memory. This has nothing to do with material. We see that he's able to function. Before he even came out to the world, they already make tests that these babies have intelligence, and they understand things, and if you inject sugar into the wounds, they drink double, and if you pinch them, they move their head, meaning the nerve system is already working, and after 5 times, they already know to move their head before you pinch them, meaning that their entire system already is on alert, that the danger is on the way, and he knows how to move. And if a woman smokes, he knows how to shrink, and all kinds of things that happen before he even came to the world. And not only that, the first thing when a baby comes to the world, immediately he goes to the source of his food. How does he know where to find it? Immediately he knows where to go. Nobody taught him. He did not go to school with instructions. We see that this creation is designed in a very interesting way, but it's not only materialistic design. There's a combination of spiritual knowledge here. There's no doubt about that. So when I look at the human being, and I see that the entire world was made for the human being. Metal, sand, stone, oxygen, water, food, animals, leather, all kinds of things, fish. Everything in the world was made for us. We dominate the world, we design, we redesign the world, we use the raw material, we control the animals, even a bear and a lion, we control them with our intelligence. They may be stronger and faster, but we control them, we can lock them in, we can eat them, we can kill them, we can do whatever we want. So everything was made for me. Now comes the next step. The Creator made such a world, and everything was made for me, for you, for every one of you here. Is it possible that the Creator made the world without a purpose? What do you think? Such a sophisticated world. Will He make a world without a purpose? So now we have to investigate. Remember, we are not talking about religion yet. This is all simple common sense. Jews, non-Jews, everybody can come to the same conclusion just by using his common sense. Is it possible that the Creator made the world without a purpose? So we have to begin to ask, so what's the purpose in that case? So everybody will suggest a different purpose. One will say, but the purpose is to get married and to have children. Right away we will answer, hundreds of millions of people are not married and do not have children. Even some people who got married cannot have children. 15% of the Jewish couples are barren, cannot have children naturally. They begin treatments, all kinds of problems. Okay. So many millions of people never get married. So that cannot be the purpose. Why one person yes and the other one is no? That cannot be the purpose. Okay, so what's the purpose? To make money? To be rich? Life is too short. How much you enjoy from it? 20, 30 years. By the time you become rich, you're 50. By age 70, 80, you're dead already. And plus, most people in the world are not rich. So it cannot be the purpose. So the purpose is to enjoy what the world has to offer. Good food, delicious fruits, vegetables, all kinds of delicious fish. Maybe that's the purpose. Well, if that's the purpose, why there are so many poor people in the world who cannot even afford once in their life to eat fish or to eat anything delicious? So it cannot be the purpose. So the purpose maybe is to be healthy, to try to maintain good health. Almost every person in the world has at least one sickness or more. So that's not the purpose. So the purpose is what? To be happy. To be happy from what? Most people are not happy. Even the richest people who I met, billionaires, they are not happy. Many of them take anti-depression medication. Many places I went, people admit to me, I'm on Prozac. That's what makes me happy for the time being. So that's not the purpose. Maybe the purpose is to be educated. But for what? Anyway, we're going to die and nothing will be left from this education. And most people in the world are not educated. Most people cannot even afford to go to university. Go to all the Arab countries. 90-something% of the Arabs do not even know how to read and write. Same thing in China. Same thing in many other countries. So education is not the purpose. So what's the purpose? If the Creator wanted me to have children, He would make me a monkey. Why would I have to be a human being? Monkey can have a female. He meets her in a jungle. He goes like this. She goes like this. 2 minutes later, they're together. Doesn't have to take her to a fancy restaurant. No show off. Not to choose a tie for 2 hours. Tuxedo, black tie. Borrow the car from his friend. Buy her the drink. Fix his hair for 2 hours. She doesn't have to go 50 times like this. None of this show. Right away, up 2 minutes later, they have babies, finished. And they don't have to bother raising them. So that's not the purpose. If God wanted us just to have children, He will make us monkeys or dogs. So in that case, that's not the purpose. So maybe the purpose is to enjoy life. But what kind of pleasure we have? 30 years we have to work to buy a house, mortgage, 3 hours in traffic every day, IRS issues, problem with the partners, problem with the customer, problems in the business, so many problems with the employees, so much problems with the competition, problems with Obama. There's so many problems. No matter where you go, there's only problems, everyday problems, so that cannot be the purpose. So based on what we said, anyone can give me a secular answer to what's the purpose of the creation? A secular answer. Yes. To love? You see how the monkeys love each other? A mother monkey would die for her babies. When the bear comes to attack, she sacrifices her life because she loves the babies. Animals in nature, they love each other. They try to protect each other. They make love, like they say in America. So love, you don't have to be a human being to have feelings. So, what is this? Give me a secular answer. What's the purpose of life? I will save you time and save myself time. The answer is, there's no answer. people that are considered themselves secular do not have any answer and any idea what's the purpose of life. That brings me back to where I ended. So is it possible that the Creator will put us here, make everything for us, and will not tell us what's the purpose? Doesn't make any sense. When a person makes a laptop, he gives a manual. When you make a table, you give a manual. Even when you buy a suit, they give you instructions on it. They stamped it inside, how to do it, how to clean it. The answer, it's not possible. Until now, we did not discuss Judaism yet. Now Judaism come into the picture. The Jewish people come to the world one day and they say, the Creator of the world came to us in Mount Sinai and He gave us a book of instruction. Torah in Hebrew means instructions, Torah. He gave us a book and taught us everything that we need to know about life. In the beginning of his book, he described how he created the world in 6 days. And in a 7th day, he rested and created nothing. Then he described to us on each day what was created. Then he described to us how he created Adam with a body and soul. Then he taught us that life begins when the soul enters the body. After God made Adam's body, the Torah says the next step was that he blew into his nostrils a living soul, whatever that means, and Adam became alive. He was aware, he was unconscious, only after the soul came in. And in another place in the Torah, it describes how a person dies. And the soul of Rachel came out, Vatamot Rachel, and Rachel died. So what's death? The soul leaves the body. In the book of Kohelet, in the Tanakh, it's also described, and the soul will return to its master that gave it, and the body will return to the ground that it came from. So there are 2 steps. The soul goes out of the body and goes up to the master that gave it. And the body must go back to the ground to be eaten by the worms and return back to the way it was before it was created. That's, by the way, right there, a big warning light to all the people that write in their wills for their children to burn their body, cremation, and spread it in the ocean and do all kinds of things with it and put it in a jar. Because the Torah says that a person came from the ashes, from the sand, and he must return to the sand. And if he does not return to the sand, for millions of years, he will never have rest. He will always suffer. And this was just to show you how ignorance can be critical. Because your father or your mother that you love so much, because of their ignorance that they never read the book of God once in their life, they thought that they will save you money on a grave, $20,000, $30,000. So they asked to burn their body and put it in a jar or give it to the fish to eat. If they only dream that by writing something so stupid in the will they will suffer for millions of years, obviously for $1 billion they wouldn't agree to do something so foolish. What caused them to do something so foolish? Not because they are stupid people. Maybe he's a big lawyer, a big scientist, a big doctor, but he was ignorant in the book of God. Why? Because he never read it. Now, in case you are questioning what I say, I will prove it to you. For 24 years, I asked over 1,000 times in my lectures. For those of you who do not know me, Baruch Hashem, my lectures go to over 120 countries. And every month I have many millions of views, many millions. Just on Facebook alone, 2 million a week. So it goes to all over the world and in different languages with subtitles to many non-Jews even. And I ask this question and it goes to so many people. And never once I got the answer that is positive. I ask all the secular people, did you ever read the Torah once in your life that you will understand just the simple meaning of the words. Forget about the secret, forget about Kabbalah, forget about the oral laws, forget about all the secrets. Just the simple understanding of the written Torah. Just like they do in first grade in yeshiva. Do you know the meaning of every verse in the Torah? Just to be able to understand what it means. Now, one person ever read the Torah once in his life. I'm talking secular people. They never read the Torah once in their life. They hear a little bit here and there. They read maybe a page here and there. Maybe people send them on WhatsApp a little bit things. Maybe they heard a lecture or two. But to read the entire Torah, 304,805 letters, I did not find one secular person that read the Torah once in his life. That's unbelievable. Why? Because many of these secular people, with no shame, criticize religion, criticize the Torah, criticize rabbis, non-stop every week of their life until the moment they die. And when you ask them, Mr. X, just explain to me what knowledge you have in Torah, in Judaism. Did you ever read the Torah once in your life? Forget, I'm not talking to you about the Talmud. I'm not talking to you about Shulchan Aruch, the Rambam, the Zohar, which take 50 years to learn. Forget about this. I'm asking you in level of first and second grade. Do you know the meaning of the words? I have no idea. He does not understand one sentence in the Torah barely. But he has speeches against religion all his life. For instance, you don't find people criticize Shakespeare if they never read Shakespeare. You see, if I come to you now today and I'm giving you a speech, how terrible was Shakespeare, how boring, what a low level Shakespeare was. So if one of you knows a little bit about Shakespeare, you would ask me, excuse me, what books of Shakespeare you ever read? Can you name? And I say, I have no idea. How many books you have? So I don't understand why you came to speak to us against Shakespeare when you don't even know how many books he wrote. Not to talk about you never read one line in his books. How do you have the nerve to criticize something you have no idea what it is? Does it make sense to you that I will criticize something that I have no idea what it is? Makes sense to you or no? The answer, everyone knows that nobody does things like this. People criticize if they know or if they think they know. But if they know they never open the book, they rather be quiet unless they're really, really stupid. That's a different story. But normal people will never criticize a book that they never even open. You agree with that so far? Please explain to me in that case how almost every secular person in the world fights the Torah non-stop when he never read it once in his life. Does it make sense to you? Why the Torah is special, an exception to the rule, that so many people dedicate their life to fight it, and fight what's in it, and fight the words of the rabbis, when they have no idea what's written inside? Who knows what's the reason behind it? Based on?
The people that follow it.
So they look at the people that follow the Torah and that gets them scared. I hear you. What else?
Inconvenient.
Oh. Once people see that there are religious people around that live according to the rules of this book, they look in a certain way, they behave in a certain way, they are limited in some of the things that they can do or cannot do, it gets them immediately worried. What if I would be like this? I don't want to be like this. I want to be free. So the Torah is a big threat to me. If I will agree with the Torah, immediately I will begin to suffer. Why? My conscience will not leave me alone. If I admit to the rabbi that everything the Torah says is true, but I don't want to live according to this book, I will have guilty feelings. Why? Because A, I know who wrote the Torah, the creator of the world. B, he gives me oxygen, money, food, wife, children, health. Everything I have comes from him according to this book. And then I ignore him, I rebel against him, I take all the gifts that he gave me in life and I use it against him. I'm a horrible human being, literally a monster. Since I do not want to define myself as a horrible, ungrateful human being, it's a much easier way to deny that the Torah is divine. That's nonsense, you and your primitive book. Leave me alone. Grow up. The world changed. That used to be in the old days. Today the rules are different. The answer to this claim is only one. It comes down to one question. Can I prove 100% that the Torah was given by the creator of the world or not? If I can prove, not believing, prove 100% that this book can never be written by a human being, never. Only the creator of the world was able to write such a book. If I prove it 100%, after that, what will be the next level, the next step? How can you ignore it? I just proved to you there's a book that the creator of the world and your creator gave you, gave me, gave everyone to live according to these rules. Not only that, it gets more critical when the Torah is full of rewards and full of punishments. The Torah writes hundreds of times, if you're going to listen to me, I will reward you and your children after you for eternity. For eternity. La'ativ lecha ulevanecha ad olam. I will reward you and your descendants forever and ever if you listen to me and you live by my instructions. Yet, there is a different side to the coin. The other side. The Torah says if you ignore me and rebel against me, the price that you're going to pay when you leave this world will be beyond any description that you can imagine. It's going to be devastating. Since there is such a claim, I have to be a fool not to clarify 100% this question. How can I sleep at night knowing someone threw such a bomb in my face? Mister, this is the book. God gave it. You live according to his instruction, you will earn for billions of years. You ignore it, the time will come when your judgment begin and you will pay forever and ever. Check. Check. If you find one mistake in this book, it's dismissed. You don't have to do anything. Why? Once you find a human error in a book, that's an indication that it's not from God. God doesn't make a mistake. I give you an example. If I came today and I gave you the book, God sent me to give you this book. What's inside the book? You're beginning to read about the creation of the world. Okay, sounds very interesting. Then you come to a chapter that describes September 11. September 11. What's September 11? The Twin Towers collapse in Brooklyn. That's what's written in my book. Right away you would say, excuse me, sir, you claim God gave you the book? Very interesting. How does God make such a foolish mistake that we won't even make? It's written right here that September 11 took place in Brooklyn. Everybody knows it happened in Manhattan. This book can never be from God. Makes sense what I say or no? After we find such a mistake in a book, can we ever rely on the book ever again or no? What do you think? If we find such a human error, can we ever follow this book and listen to all his instructions? Or everything in this book from now on will be questionable? What do you think? Who would follow it after we'll find such a mistake? Nobody. Why you won't follow it? Because you know God doesn't make such mistakes. So let me give you an example. In the New Testament of the Christians, In Act 7, in the end of the New Testament, they have Acts. Act 7, it's written that the cave of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is in the city of Shechem, Nablus, when everybody knows it's in Hebron. It's always been there for over 3,000 years. It never ever moved from there. The grave of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the mothers are in the city of Hebron, where the Arabs made a mosque next to it and the Jews going there. Every generation, all the history books are full of descriptions of people who went to pray there. It's always been there, but there is a human error in the New Testament. It says that it's in a different city. The person that wrote the New Testament, that close to 2 billion Christians follow, made a mistake because he got confused between the grave of Joseph and the grave of Jacob. Jacob, the father of Joseph, was buried in Hebron. Joseph was buried in Shechem, in a different city. Here you have one human error. In the New Testament, that never ever denied that the Torah is from God. The Christian never claimed that God didn't give the Jews the Torah in Mount Sinai. The opposite, it appears in their books. They follow the same events, same thing the Muslims. In the New Testament, it says that God sent Jacob with his family to Egypt. How many people came to Egypt? 75 people. The problem is that in the Torah, 1300 years earlier, it's written 70 people. What happened to God? He doesn't remember if it's 70 or 75? There is hundreds of mistakes in the New Testament. Hundreds. If you want to watch them, and if you want to learn about them, please watch my debate with a Christian professor. It's a 3 hours debate. You will see that he could not answer one of my questions. Why? Because he himself got the shock of his life. None of the things I showed him, he ever was aware of it. To the point that he drank 17 bottles of water and was praying to God that the evening and the nightmare will end. And today, many years later, he still did not come back with one answer. What about the Quran? 1.5 billion people follow the Quran strictly. According to the Quran, who is the mother of JC? JC is the Messiah of the Christian. The Muslims admit the 24 books of the Jews are legit. They respect all the prophets. And they claim that JC and Christianity is also a legit prophet. And now came Muhammad and gave the Quran 1400 years ago, 2000 years after Judaism, and 600 years after Christianity. There's only one problem. In the book of the Quran, and you watch it in my Torah and science film, it's written over there that who is the mother of JC? What was her name? Mary, right? Mary, how do you say Mary in Hebrew? Miriam. How do you say it in Spanish? Maria. It's the same woman. Maria, Mary, Miriam, Mariam. In Farsi, in Arabic, Mariam. The same Miriam. There's only one problem. The writer of the Quran made such a critical mistake that finished the book before it even started. Destroyed his own book. According to the Quran, the mother of JC is Miriam, the sister of Aaron and Moshe and the daughter of Amram. He got confused between two Miriam. Mariam bat Amram, the sister of Aaron, that became pregnant even though she was a virgin. And in the Quran, as you can see the sources, I show all the surahs over there. According to the Quran, Moshe Rabbeinu was the uncle of JC. Even though JC was 1300 years after Moshe Rabbeinu. Critical mistake. A very critical mistake. According to the Quran, there was a very important meeting between two wicked people, Pharaoh and Haman. It's written in the Quran that Pharaoh, the last king of Egypt, that tortured the Jewish people in Egypt, which the Quran called him an evil man, wicked person, had a meeting with another wicked person named Haman. how to go and make a tower that they can go and fight the God of the Jews. There's only one problem, that Haman was almost 1,000 years after the last Pharaoh died. So they could never meet each other. Pharaoh was in Egypt and Haman was in Persia. Maybe they met in hell, but they didn't meet in this world. So here is a second mistake in the Quran that shows you right away that he cannot be from God. A third proof. How many versions you have to the New Testament? Who knows today? How many different texts? Over 200,000 different texts. Over 200,000 different texts. How many different Qurans there are? Not so bad. Only few hundreds. Few hundred versions. How many Torahs you have in the whole world? One Torah anywhere you go. Go to Poland, same Torah. Go to Egypt, go to Yemen, go Germany, go to Syria, go to Israel, go to United States, go to Russia. Same Torah. But it's very interesting. Nobody fought to destroy the Quran or the New Testament. Everybody fought the Torah and Judaism. Always. Pogrom, Holocaust, destruction of the first temple, destruction of the second temple, exiles, destroy Judaism. The Romans made decrees. Everyone fought the Jewish religion. The Torah is the same Torah, and it's always been all over the world with no internet, no telephone, no communication whatsoever. And their books, many different versions. But the Torah only one. Now, in my film Torah and Science, you're going to see unbelievable prophecies. What the Torah already told the Jewish people that is going to happen to them. As a matter of fact, yesterday in the synagogues we read the parasha of Vayelech. It's the shortest parasha in the Torah. Only 30 verses. That's it. 10 minutes they finish to read it. The shortest. In Parashat Vayelech, it described the Holocaust. When did the Holocaust happen? 78 years ago. When was the Torah written? Over 3,300 years ago. The Torah said that God said to Moshe, you're going to lay with your fathers, and this nation will rebel against me and follow fake gods or fake religions. And they will say there's no God among us. And at that time, I would leave them in the hand of these goyim. They will do whatever they want with them, and I will close my eyes and I will not protect them. In this chapter that describes the Holocaust, it's very interesting. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Hincha shochev im avotecha, vekam ha'am hazeh vezana, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Go tonight, open the Torah. Go to Parashat Vayelech. It's close to the end of the Torah. Mamash in the end. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Circle the hay of the word Moshe. Circle it with a pencil. Count 49 letters after the Moshe. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Hincha shochev. Hey, Hincha. Hey, Nun, Chaf. You begin to count. Hey, it's 1. Nun, it's 2. Chaf, it's 3. Shochev, Shin. You count 49 letters. The 50th letters will be Shin. Circle the Shin. So what do we have? We have Hey and we have Shin. From the Shin, count 49 letters. The 50th letter will be Vav. Circle the Vav. What do we have? Hey, Shin, Vav. Count 49 letters. The 50th letters will be Aleph. Circle the Aleph. What do we have? A, Shin, Vav, Aleph. Count 49 letters. The 50th letters will be Hey. What do you get? The Holocaust. HaShoah. The Holocaust is hidden inside a text in the Torah that was written 3,200 years before the Holocaust started, in the only place in the Torah that describe a Holocaust and God left the Jewish people in the hand of the monsters. In this chapter, A corner of a page. The word the Holocaust is hidden in equal mathematical skip. But it gets better. The Torah warned the Jews not to follow fake religions. The religion of the wood and the religion of the stone. Which two religions resemble the wood and the stone? Who knows? When the Christians say knock on wood, what do they mean? What wood? The cross of JC. That's their symbol. When the Muslims speak about the stone, which stone is important in Islam? Mecca. They have a big stone over there. 2 million Muslims go on Ramadan to Saudi Arabia there. Every year, they all wear white, they stay over there, and they all worship whatever the holiday is there. So it's very interesting. So you have the religion of the rock, of the stone, and the religion of the wood. Now, in case you are doubting what I say, in this verse that warned the Jewish people not to follow fake religions, we have two words hidden in equal mathematical skip of 49. The word JC, Yud Shin Vav, Yud Shin Vav, and the word Mecca, Mem Chaf Hei. Both of them appear in this verse in equal mathematical skip. What are the odds that 2,000 years before Islam and 1,300 years before Christianity, in a verse of the Torah that warned the Jewish people not to follow fake religion, the Torah will put two key words in hidden skip in the verse? Yud, Shin, and Vav, Mem, Chaf, and Hey. Yeshu and Mecca. What are the odds? What human being was able to plan such a thing in a text? Nobody would ever know there's such a thing, Mecca. We're talking 2,000 years before Muhammad. We're talking 1,300 years before JC. And it's no coincidence, because the Torah put it exactly in a verse that warns us from two fake religions that will come later on. Right there, you have two words that describe exactly what the Torah was talking about. I'll give you another example. When you open the Torah in the first page, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Bereshit. You circle the top of the word Bereshit, you count 49 letters, what do you get? The 50th letter is Vav. You count 49 letters, the 50th letters is Resh. You count 49 letters, the 50th letters is Hey. In the first word of the Torah, you already have an equal mathematical skip of the word Torah. From the word Bereshit, the top of Bereshit, circle it, count 49 letters, you get Vav, you get Resh, and you get Hey. You go to Sefer Shmot, Exodus, Ve'ele Shmot Bnei Israel. These are the names of the Jewish people who went to Egypt. Ve'ele Shmot. You circle the top of Shmot, count 49 letters, you get Vav. 49 letters Resh, 49 letters Hey. What do you get? Torah also in the book of Exodus. Let's skip Vayikra, Leviticus for a second. Let's go to Numbers, Bamidbar. You have the same thing, Torah from left to right, in reverse. In equal mathematical skip of 49. You go to Deuteronomy, Dvarim, you have Torah from left to right, in equal mathematical skip of 49. And what do you have in the middle? In Leviticus, the name of God, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, in equal mathematical skip. So you have a menorah of 5 arms, 2 and 2, and the center. The center is God, and the Torah from both sides covering the entire world. In equal mathematical skip in a text. If you know a little bit math, you would know that to do something like this in a book, it's impossible, because you have to change the entire meaning of the text. You have to change the whole text, because you have to plant words in a text in equal mathematical skip. You have to move words around. It will change the entire subject. Something like this can never be done. Now I want to move on. If we find one mistake in the Torah, it's all over. 3,300 years, the greatest brains in the whole world, Rambam and the Gaon Mivilna and all the Tanaim and the Amoraim, thousands of the most brilliant people who ever lived in this world, lived 100% according to the Torah. They sat all day with tefillin and learned Torah, all lived according to the Torah. As a matter of fact, until 220 years ago, it was almost impossible to find one secular Jew in the whole world. Did you know that? 220 years ago, any country you would go, all the Jewish people were all keeping Shabbat, eating kosher, going to the synagogue. The judge was the chief rabbi of the town. This is how all the communities were. In Yemen, until this moment, you never had one Jew that did not keep Shabbat. Ever. 2,600 years. Until now. Even there are 150 Yemenite Jews still in Yemen, all of them religious. All the generation, 2,600 years, probably hundreds of thousands of Jews lived in Yemen. Not one of them was ever Mechalel Shabbat. That's the only country that nobody there was secular. Never. In other countries, some people were not keeping Torah and mitzvot, hiddenly, but only 220 years ago, in Europe, the Haskalah movement began, and Moses Mendelssohn went to college. For the first time, a Jew went to college, and his children went to college, and all his children met German girls. They married them and converted to Christianity. Their father, Moses Mendelssohn, was an Orthodox rabbi. Within 10-15 years, all his sons married non-Jewish women and converted to Christianity. Between Moses Mendelssohn until the Holocaust, 150 years, 8 generations of assimilation. In Germany and some other countries, the intermarriage rate went to 80% before the Holocaust. 80%. I saw a movie from 1940, before the Holocaust, in Warsaw, in Poland. In Poland, you had the biggest Jewish community. More than 3 million Jews lived there. I saw a film in the Jewish community of Warsaw. Half of the people over there, you would never believe they're Jewish. Hair, no yarmulke. Mamash, like goyim. In Warsaw. And Warsaw was a very religious place. There was a lot of Hasidim there. But many people do not know. I spoke to a very old man, 100 years old, from Warsaw. He said, a lot of the people in my town already started to marry non-Jews. They left. Now you know only the Hasidim, but there was a different side in Warsaw. Even there was assimilation. In every country in Europe. And then the Holocaust came. We were 18 million people in the world. After that, it went down to 12 million. And today, we hardly grew. 15 million the most. 7 years. We should have been over 100 million from the Holocaust until now. If every person gives 2 or 3 children and grandchildren, 7 years, it's already 3 generations. Should have been 100 million people. What's happening? The same problem, assimilation and intermarriage. Why would a person leave Judaism and do not care that his children will not be Jewish? The answer, ignorance. He was never raised religious. He never ever met the religion. Therefore, he gives up the religion 1 to 3, just because he fell in love with a non-Jewish woman. He doesn't care so much about his identity because nobody ever explained to him that the only purpose that God put him here is the religion. So by going against it, you're actually wasting your entire 80 years. And the biggest problem is that you're going to have to pay for it so bad that if you only knew what's waiting for you, believe me, not one person would dare to do it. Again, comes down to the same problem, ignorance. Now, I'm not here to scare you, but I have an obligation to teach the truth. And if anything I say you disagree, you raise your hand and you ask me where is the source, and I will show you the source. As a matter of fact, if you speak Hebrew, you don't even need. Just buy my book, $20, you have everything over there. Everything. We combine all the proofs that leaves no doubt. Once you read it, that's it. Everyone in Israel that read that book, even the most anti-people, they give up. I have nothing to answer. Why? Everything is accumulated into one book. Now I want to give you an example what I'm talking about when I say proof. We all know that some fish is kosher and some fish is not kosher. How do we know if a fish is kosher or not? You're going to Chinatown to buy fish. It's half a price than everywhere else. You come over there, how are you, Mr. Lee? How are you? No problem. How much is this fish? $5 a pound. Oh, wow, where I live it's $12 a pound. No problem, I want to buy the whole carton. How do you know if it's kosher or not? Obviously, Mr. Lee have no idea what fish is kosher or not. He sell over there sharks and shrimps and anything that moves. Octopus, all kinds of things like this. So now how do you know if it's kosher or not? It's not like in Costco, they have a label, what kind of fish it is. It's big companies, big corporations. Over there, you see fish that they brought from the sea. How do you know if it's kosher or not? The Torah says, Rabotai, every fish or everything that you get out of the ocean have to have two signs to make sure it's kosher. It has to have fins and it has to have scales. Fins and scales. If it does not have one of them, it's not kosher. If it does not have both of them, needless to say, it's not kosher. So for instance, shark is kosher or not? Why not? Doesn't have scales. Dolphin, same story. Salmon, kosher, have fins and have scales. We got the point. Now we're going to the oral Torah. The written Torah was given to Moses in a public event in front of millions of witnesses. The entire Jewish people were standing in Mount Sinai when God and Moshe spoke. How do we know it really happened? How do I know for sure? You know, I'm not a naive person. Everything people tell me, I check very, very carefully. Most of the time, what do you see? That what people say and what the reality is not exactly the same. My question to you is, how do I know 1,000,000,000% that the Jewish people got the Torah in a public event and all the Jewish people heard God and Moshe speaking in front of their entire nation? How do I know it's for sure happened? Who can give me an answer? The answer is, Rabotai, after Judaism was given to the Jewish people, more than 80,000 religions and cults started. Among them, Islam, New Testament, Buddhism, Hinduism, Krishna, and many other cults. What is the difference between Judaism to 80,000 religions and cults who started after? Who knows? The main difference. Yes? Very good. The answer is, all the religion that you ever heard about, check, include Islam and include New Testament, started with a story of one person. One person came and said, God gave me this book. Muhammad came and said, I got this book from Angel Gabriel in the desert. I was alone, I got the book, and I'm the new prophet. How many people saw Angel Gabriel gave Muhammad the Quran? No one. Based on his story, he was alone. Mary, that claimed that God came to her in a dream and told her that her son will be something special. How many people can verify her dream? What do you say? No one. Why? Nobody knows what a person dreams. You can say anything you want. How many people heard Moshe and God speaking? The entire nation of Israel. How do I know? I'll tell you how. If I come to you now and I give you a book, and it's written in a book that all of you heard me and God speaking, and all of you heard it, will I dare to make a fool out of myself by coming to millions of people and give them now a book, that the book describe everything that happened to them in Egypt? I took you out of Egypt, I killed the Egyptians, I made blood all over Egypt, frogs, I split the Red Sea, I'm giving you bread from heaven, I supply you with water, I made you win against your enemy. And it's written over there that all of us heard me speaking to God. Will I be able to convince you that all these miracles happened to you if one of them did not really happen? What do you think? Can I convince millions of people that it happens? What do you say? No, I'm looking for an answer. In the Quran, does it speak about any of the Arabs that are going to receive the Quran later on? Does it mention anything about them in a book? Does the Quran come to the Arab and say, I made you miracles, I took you out of this country and I brought you to this country? Does the Quran say to the Arabs, all of you saw me receiving the Quran from Angel Gabriel? No. Why the Quran doesn't say it? Because Muhammad was alone. Once you're alone, nobody can prove and nobody can disprove. It's your word against the people's word. It's a matter of faith. You know how it started or no? You know a little bit the history of it? Once he came from one tribe to another, offering them the Quran. Some of them agree, and some of them disagree. Those who disagree, what happened to them? What happened today if you disagree to be a Muslim in the Arab countries? Same thing happened back then. You either convert to Islam or we chop your head off. People have no choice. Even many of the Jews converted to Islam from fear. So it started with fear. Same thing Christianity. Christianity 500 years ago were doing worse thing to the Jewish people. The Spanish Inquisition, the Portuguese, you know what they used to do? The biggest torture you can imagine. The biggest nightmare the Jews went in Spain and in Portugal 500 years ago. The Christians today don't use torture. They don't use violence anymore. They came to the conclusion they won't help with the Jews. No matter how much we torture them, they still stay Jews. They did not convert to Christianity and they did not accept JC. So today they have missionaries. They come to a lot of naive Jews and sell them the New Testament, and many of them fall into the trap. That's why I made my debate with a Christian professor to prove to all the people that Christianity is full of mistakes. I want to finish the last few minutes with the most important thing of the night. Like I said, if you still have any doubts if God runs the show, if He made us, if He supplies us with everything we have, watch my film and you won't have any doubt. Torah and Science. If you have any doubt that the Torah is divine, I will give you one proof now, and the rest you watch in a film. The Torah, the oral Torah that was given together with the written Torah, say to the Jewish people, everything that have fins and scales you're allowed to eat. And the oral Torah also say, you will never find anything in the water that have scales and does not have fins. Please concentrate for 1 minute. Please focus. There is a book that was written 3,300 years ago. 72% of the world is water. 72% of the world is water. How deep? More than 12 kilometers. How many creatures and species live in the water? Billions. We don't even have a way to count. We know more than 40,000 different kinds of fish by names. 40,000. When the Torah was given, half of these things did not even exist. They constantly get mixed together and they create new species all the time. So the Torah says 3,300 years ago, very, very big risk. The Torah says, you will never find one thing in the water that you have scales in it and does not have fins. Never. It means that if we find one snake in the water that has scales like the fish, you scrub it and they fall off, and it finishes with a tail, it doesn't have fins, that's the end of Judaism. Everything is finished. Why? What's the connection? Because remember what I said before, the Torah said there is never ever any mistake. There's no mistake. So the Torah promised, everything you take out of the water, if you saw scales, it must have fins. I created everything I know. If you find one time something with scales and does not have fins, that's the end of everything. That's the first mistake in the Torah. No more Yom Kippur, no more Shabbat, no more anything. Now please tell me, do you think a human being was able 3,300 years to promise such a thing? What human being can watch the entire world, 72% of the water, simultaneously and tell you there's no such a fish? What human being can predict the future 3,300 years ahead? What human being will take such a risk by riding that something like this will never ever happen? What human being can ever predict such a thing? Do you think it's possible for a human being to write such a thing? Anyone? Alex, please. Anyone can tell me if something like this can be written by a human being, or that's a clear indication that the creator of the world was the only one who can write it? Anyone think it was able to be written by a person? Please raise your hand and tell me why. Okay, now this is only one proof out of thousands of proofs that I actually have in the Torah. Thousands of proofs that I actually can show you in the Torah that only the creator of the world was able to write such a thing. And that brings me to the finish of the night. Before we give you out the baskets, and if you have questions, I can answer all your questions, of course, Bezrat Hashem. It brings me now to the most important thing. The Jewish nation, had an eternal covenant between them and the creator of the world. Who can tell me what is the eternal covenant between the Jewish nation and the creator of the world? What is the eternal covenant? The agreement, the handshake. What's the name of it? Who knows? The answer, the most important mitzvah that is the foundation of the entire building. If you keep it, you belong to the nation of God. And if you refuse to keep it, you cut yourself out of the nation of God. Which mitzvah are we talking here about? Very good. The answer is, there's one mitzvah in the Torah that by not keeping it, you get yourself excluded totally from Judaism. For instance, if you are a very big thief, you're still a Jew. If you're a very big rapist, you're still a Jew. If you are a very big murderer, you're still a Jew. If you're a very big drug addict or drug dealer, you're still a Jew. If you are the nastiest person on earth, you're still a Jew. A wicked Jew, but still a Jew. Two things make you lose your Jewish identity. Two things in the Torah. Who knows what the two things are? One is not keeping Shabbat. Immediately you lose your Jewish status. And the second thing is idol worshipping. when you worship anyone or anything besides God. You worship a man, you worship a cow, you worship a statue, you worship a rabbi, it doesn't really matter. You worship anybody besides God, immediately you lose your Jewish status. It doesn't mean that you are not born Jewish. Your mother is Jewish, you're Jewish. It doesn't mean you don't have a Jewish soul. You have a Jewish soul. If your mother is Jewish, you have a Jewish soul. If your father is Jewish, we don't know what you are. We only go by the mother. If your mother is Jewish, you are Jewish. If your father is Jewish but your mother is not, you are not Jewish. You don't even have to listen to this lecture. You're free to keep only the 7 laws of the Gentiles. 7 laws. The Gentiles can keep only 7 laws and they go to heaven. They don't need to be Christian, they don't need to be Muslims, they don't need to be Hindus, they don't need to join any of the 80,000 fake religions and cults. All they have to do is to keep the 7 laws of the Gentiles that God said to Noah after the flood. They should not kill, you should not steal, don't eat animals unless they're dead. First, you have to kill them first before you eat them. You should not be an idol worshiper. You believe in one God and respect Him. No sex crimes with a relative, homosexuality or sex with animals, and no murder. If you keep the 7 laws of the Gentiles, you go to heaven of the Gentiles. I want to read to you some of the things the Torah says. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. And the nation of Israel observed the Sabbath to make the Sabbath an eternal covenant between me and the nation of Israel. It's a sign for eternity that I created the world in 6 days and in a 7th day I rested. I created the world in 6 days, and in a 7th day I rested. Now let me explain to you what I just said. Who is speaking here, first of all? I just read to you a part from the Torah. Who is speaking here? Hashem. God. What does it say? The nation of Israel keep the Sabbath. Why? To make the Sabbath an eternal covenant between me and the nation of Israel. It's a sign for eternity that I created the world in 6 days and in the 7th day I rested. What does it say right after that? Mechaleleha mot yumat. Jews that do not keep Shabbat will be put to death earlier in this life and will be put to death for the next life, which is eternity. ונכרתה הנפש ההיא מעמיה. I'm going to cut that soul out of the nation of Israel for eternity. I will repeat. And then if you have any questions, please ask. The Torah says, I'm making a covenant between you and me today. The reason I chose you from all the nation to be mine is thanks to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They were righteous, and I swore to them that I will give my Torah to their children and bring them to the Holy Land to build the temple and to live there. Because I promised it to your fathers, I'm making this covenant with you today. Banim atem laHashem Elokechem. You are my children. Bachem bacharti mikol ha'amim liot li le'am. I chose you from all the nations to be mine. Do not follow the ways of the goyim at all. Don't do what they do. Don't dress like them. Don't name yourself after them. Don't go and marry them. All this is strictly forbidden to you. You are a VIP nation, a special, eternal, holy nation. Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani. You must be holy because I'm holy. But I will reward you for that. You are now working for free. I will be strict with you to test you and check what's in your heart. Will you still keep my commandments or not? That I should reward you in your end. When you die, the reward will begin. But not with the body. The body will go to the ground and the worms will eat it up. The body worth $3 in a lab. Iron, metal, minerals, water, that's nothing. Everybody understands the human being is the soul. Once the soul go and get the right place in heaven based on your actions, the pleasure cannot be described in this world because nobody would understand this kind of level of pleasure. It's a spiritual, eternal pleasure forever and ever. It will never stop and you will never get tired of it. Every physical pleasure today, after an hour maximum, you get tired of it. Okay, enough, I had enough. You need a day of rest. Why? Because you cannot go on with materialistic pleasure, because it's temporary and false. But this is a spiritual, divine pleasure that the Torah says that if you take all the pleasures of all the people, of all the generation combined, and you take from the beginning of the world to the end, all the pleasure that people ever had, all of them together will not be equal to 1 hour of the pleasure of the soul in the afterlife. If you kept Shabbat, and you ate kosher, and you dress modest, and you put your children to learn Torah, and you live according to the rules of my book. On the other hand, if you ignore my rules and live like a goy, what does it mean? I will translate to you word by word. Mechaleleha. Mechalel means take something that is holy and make it chol. You have Yom Chol and Yom Shabbat. Shabbat and Yom Tov is holy. Weekdays, it's chol. So when you take Shabbat and make it a regular day, you drive, you work, you smoke, technology, all the things that you do in the 6 days, you take the holy gift that God gave us and turn it into garbage, to nothing. As results of that, the Torah say, you're going to be chas v'shalom, God forbid, none of any of the people who sits here. But just for us to know, I did not write the Torah. If it was up to me, I would not punish anyone, and that's, who am I to judge anyone? But my responsibility is to open up your eyes, that you understand that if you're not going to wake up today, 2 days before Yom Kippur, once you leave this world, you're going to have a very, very serious problem to deal with. That's why it's better to cure the problem today, that later on we don't have to deal with that, which will be a lot worse. So the Torah says, Mechalele amot yumat, someone who breaks Shabbat and turns it into a weekday, mot yumat, will be put to death in this world and in the next world. And I will cut his soul from the afterlife for eternity. V'nichreta nefesh, I'm cutting the soul, not the body. The body, everyone will die in the end. Age 50, 70, 90, it's a blink of the eye anyway. We are now talking where the soul will go. And someone that doesn't keep Shabbat is not allowed to be buried in a Jewish cemetery, because once he broke Shabbat, he lost his Jewish identity. In the religious cemeteries in Israel and in the world, and in Monsey, where I live, you have one section for non-observance of Shabbat. They cannot be buried with all the Jews who kept Shabbat. They have to be buried with a separation between them and the Jews that kept Shabbat. Because everyone who does not keep Shabbat lost his Jewish status for eternity. If he dies Mechalel Shabbat, he's in a very serious problem. Not only that, if you have a section, in the old days, everybody was Shomer Shabbat. In the old days, 500, 600, 700 years ago, even the murderers of those days were keeping Shabbat. Everyone was keeping Shabbat in the whole Jewish community. Everything was on strike. All the businesses closed. People, there was no electric, no everything mamash like the old days it used to be. But sometimes people have a fight, they kill. They stabbed someone. They punched someone and they killed him. What do? If you have a section of murderers, remember all these murderers are Shomer Shabbat. If you bury 30 murderers in a section, and by mistake you buried a Jew that is not Shomer Shabbat, but is not a murderer. By mistake, you bury him with the murderers. You must open his grave and take him out of it, because it's an insult to the murderers that they buried Mechalel Shabbat with them. That's the divine law. This is what God said. A Mechalel Shabbat has a much bigger punishment than the punishment of a murderer in the Torah. The punishment of a murderer is much lower than the punishment of a Jew who does not keep Shabbat. So we, out of the ignorance that we live in, we already lost understanding how important Shabbat is. So for us to finally understand the mistake, the critical mistake that we grew up with, it's about time to fix that mistake. And everybody has to understand. If you go to the court and one criminal come out of one room with handcuffs, and in another room, another criminal comes out with handcuffs, and you ask, what is the sentence of the first criminal? And they say 1 year in prison. And then you ask, what's the sentence of the other criminal? 30 years in prison. But you don't know what crime they committed. Now you have to gamble. Which one of the two criminals committed a bigger crime? The one that got 1 year in prison, or the one that got 30 years in prison? Where would you put your money on? Huh? 30 years. How do I know that the person that got 30 years in prison committed a much bigger crime? Based on the punishment, I know how severe is the crime. Everybody agree with that? Okay, now, the punishment of Mechalel Shabbat, besides the death penalty, it's a cut for the soul for eternity. The punishment of a murderer, it's not a cut for the soul. It's death penalty, but an easier death. Shabbat is stoning, and a murderer is with a sword. And murderer does not get karet. He does tshuva. If he makes repentance, he has a share to the world to come. Someone that die without keeping Shabbat lose his share from the afterlife for eternity. I'll give you another example. If you take a $20,000 bottle of wine, very, very old, fancy wine, and you pour it into the glass because you want to make kiddush, or you want your son is getting married today, or your grandson has a circumcision, so you kept that bottle of wine for the special event, and you pour it inside the cup, and your father, or your brother, or your best friend that is not Shomer Shabbat, touched the glass, touched it like this. You have to take the $20,000 glass of wine and spill it right into the bathroom. You cannot do kiddush on it, you cannot use it for the brit, and you cannot use it for the wedding. Why? Once Mechalel Shabbat touched the wine is not kosher anymore. Two people have to sign the ketubah when you get married. You want to get married tonight with your wife. The moment you waited 20 years for that moment, one of the two witnesses were not Shomer Shabbat. The rabbi didn't know them. One of them is not Shomer Shabbat. You are not married. Mechalel Shabbat is 100% like a non-Jew. If he witnessed a wedding, the Chatan and Kala are not married. They have to get remarried. If they will have children, they are not mamzerim, but these children out of the marriage, like a boyfriend and girlfriend have children, but they are not mamzerim. So they have to go and get remarried. They have to go to the rabbi with two kosher witnesses and make a new ketubah. Rabotai, I have a list of another 30 things to tell you, but time ran out. But I hope that there are people sitting in this room today that have honesty in them. And they care about their future. I'm sure all of you care about your future. You all save money. You all work very hard. You all care about your children's education because you want the future to be better. So all of you, without knowing you, I'm sure that you're thinking about 10, 20, 30 years ahead. Even if you're 60 years old, you still work very hard because you want even your grandchildren to have good life. That's the nature of the people. My question to you is, it's very understandable why you invest a lot of your time and efforts to make the future of your children and yourself better. But one thing I don't understand, why don't you care about your eternal life, which is 1,000,000,000 times more important than 500 times to live here? If you live here 500 times until 80 years old, it doesn't come to 1% of the importance of the life of your soul, which is eternal. And if you read in the book of God that if you go against him and you ignore and you don't put tefillin, and you eat non-kosher, and you speak gossip all day, and you do all kinds of things against the Torah, there are consequences to these actions, and there is a very heavy punishment. The world was created with 50-50 balance. Reward and punishment. Reward and punishment. Everything in life is reward and punishment. Not only in the Torah, even in the Constitution of the United States. There are things that will put you in prison for life. There are things that will put you to death. There are things that you lose everything you own. Everybody understands. There are certain things in life, if you do it, you may lose everything you earn. And everybody lives perfectly with it. Why? Society needs reward and punishment. Only when it comes to the Torah, which is the only authentic, real, proven, divine document, everybody has complaints. Prove to me, I'm not sure, I don't believe in it, you believe in it, leave me alone, you be religious and let me do whatever I want. Rabotai, excuses will not work. I have hundreds and hundreds of proofs. Now 1 or 2 or 3. Hundreds and hundreds non-stop from now until after Sukkot, I can give you proofs. The question is, are you real or you fake? If you fake, even when your doctor tells you if you don't have the operation you die, you still won't have the operation because you don't care. But if you're real, tonight when you go home, and this is perfect time now, 2 days before Yom Kippur, before you go to sleep, speak to Hashem. And this is what you say. Dear God, I lived all my life without direction, without religion. I did not grow up according to your rules. My parents didn't know. They put me here in public school. I never read your book once in my life. Everything I have came from you. You gave me everything. I'm healthy. You give me oxygen. You gave me family, a house to live, cars, money. I eat well. I function. I have a source of income. I have children. You did so much for me. And not intentionally, I took everything you gave me and used it against you. So first of all, please forgive me for the horrible ungratefulness that I live with all my life. That's number 1. Second, it's not enough that today I found out that I lived in a lie. It's not enough. I need you to continue to help me. You already helped me by getting me into this event here tonight. Many people wanted to come to this event and they didn't come. Some people came from Canada to this event. So some people, Hashem gave them permission to come here tonight. Other, the babysitter didn't show up, flat tire, problem in the business, they fight in the last minute, all kinds of things that happen in the last minute. If you already came here, you came to the well. Now you have to drink. If you came to the well and you won't drink, what's the point? Now, anyone here disagree or not sure about anything that I say here tonight, please feel comfortable, raise your hand and ask me. Prove to me, I'm not sure, I disagree. Anything you have, any comments, positive, negative, now it's the time. Anyone? So no one has anything to say. Yeah, there's one person. Yes, go ahead. Loud. 49, skip of 49 letters. Okay, 49, as you know, is 7 times 7. If you know in Judaism, the most important number is number 7. Everything in the Torah goes with 7. Shabbat 7, Sukkot 7, Pesach 7, Shemitah 7 times 7. a lot of the things in the Torah, it's always 7. Why 7? It's a number that God loves so much. The answer is, everything in this world has 6 dimensions. You have up and down, south, north, west, and east. Up and down, 6 dimensions. Every material has 6 dimensions. 7 symbolize exiting from the temporary world of material, into the spiritual world. 7 is the 7th dimension, going out of material. In the first word of the Torah, Bereshit, in the beginning, this is the creation of material. The creation of material is also the creation of time. As Albert Einstein explained to us, even though the credit is 700 years before into the Ramban, but they don't teach in Harvard about the Ramban, so they think Einstein discovered it. So Einstein already told us that time exists only where material exists. Time exists where material exists. I give you an example. If you go out of the material world, how can you go out of the material world? When we die, we go out of the material world, and when we have a dream. Scientists prove that the longest dream is 9 seconds. 9 seconds. But sometimes the husband goes to sleep at midnight, and 2 minutes later he begins to cry, and he moves in bed, and he's about to get a heart attack. And his wife wakes him up. Isaac, wake up. What happened? What happened to you? Crying, you're screaming, you okay? Give me water, I'm dying. What happened? I had a nightmare. Tell me, talk to me. He begins to describe 6 months of tortures. The Hezbollah picked me up. They took me to Lebanon. Every day they're beating me up from morning to night. They, wow, this guy was cursing me all day. She said, I don't get it. You only went to sleep 2 minutes ago. And I just woke you up 2 minutes later. You just told me a story that took 6 months in time. Until the boat arrived from United States to Lebanon, there was alone a month. All the conversation you had with Mustafa and Ahmed and Saeed, every conversation took an hour. How everything fit in 9 seconds? How? If you have a tape of 1 hour, a CD, 1 hour, can you fit 500 hours on it? No, right? If I take a cassette that has 60 minutes on a tape, and I put 1,000 hours on it, everyone will be shocked. How did you do it? Something doesn't make sense here. How 1,000 got into 1? This is an example how when the soul exits the body, it goes to a spiritual world that it's all a simulation over there. Whatever time God wants you to feel, that's what you feel. You don't need the time like here with material movement of the earth and universe. It's all like a fantasy. But the difference is here that we have a lot of ideas and fantasies and illusions. But eventually we realize it's an illusion. But in the next world, it will be eternal. It will never ever stop. Whether you're going to be in heaven or God forbid in hell, both of them will be for X amount of years, or can be millions of years, but it's all like a simulation, just like in a dream, and it's all real. Person feels he's burning, and he's screaming, and he's crying, and he suffers, and when he wakes up, hey, my body was in bed all this time, so how did I go through this burning for 6 months? This is what heaven and hell is, in 2 minutes explanation. Any more questions?
Robert, someone asked a question.
Yes.
They asked a question. They asked me to ask you, if my spouse or my family member not ready to be religious yet, but I want to, how do I handle this and how do I deal with it?
Good question.
Please repeat it.
Sometimes the husband and wife, they do not progress in the same speed. The husband or the wife wants to become religious and the other one refuses. And he gives them hard time. So first of all, there's no contradiction if one of the two become religious. Yes, I know it's not so convenient because she wants to do certain things on Shabbat, and now we become an observant of Shabbat. But I believe and I've seen it from experience, that if the husband and wife respect each other and they do a lot of things together and compromise, that the one who wants to be more religious, by giving love and attention to the other one, can convince them to join. However, there is also one other way which is very recommended. Whatever you learn, share with your wife or with the husband. Here is what I saw. Watch this film with me. Watch this lecture about Shabbat with me. Let's watch the debate together. One other thing is, with all due respect to the spouse, who is more important? Your father, your mother, your children, your husband, your wife, or your creator? With all the love to your wife, and all the love to your husband, and all the love to your children, and there should be love and a lot of respect, none of it comes even near to your obligation to your creator, who supplies you with oxygen every second. So, if you have a dilemma, who should I go with? With God or with my wife? With God or with my husband? With God or with my parents? The answer in the Torah is very clear. The Torah says, Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, respect your father and mother. I am God. What does it have to do with this now? Meaning, as long as they do not cause you to go against me. Once they become an obstacle between you and me, your obligation to them is on hold. Your obligation to me comes before. Same thing with your husband, same thing with your wife. So you do everything you can to do it peacefully. There's no point of fighting. You don't run to break the family. As a matter of fact, anything that the wife does not want to do, no Beit Din will order them to get divorced, except one thing. There's only one thing. If she refused to go to the mikveh, then he cannot touch her, cannot be intimate. Then it's a big problem. So after a few months, they will ask her, do you want to keep the marriage? If she say yes, so sacrifice only once a month, go to the mikveh. If she does that, no rabbi will tell them to get divorced. Same thing with the husband. If you want to be religious and he doesn't want to keep, that's his life. You will be saved and he will have to deal with his problems. But like I said, if you do it with love and respect and share information, or you can always bring them to me, to one of my lectures, and many people did it, and Baruch Hashem it worked. And you also have to pray to Hashem, help me with my wife, help me with my husband. I want, but they're holding me back. That's the answer to your question. There was a question right there in that area over there. Any more questions? So I would like to wish every one of you, Bezrat Hashem, to have a very good, successful year to come. And I hope, Bezrat Hashem, everyone will take what they heard here today seriously to consideration. Huh? There's more question? Oh, there's one more question.
Why do righteous people suffer doing the right thing all the time, while the evildoers get away with terrible social and other times?
Okay, there's a famous question here that everybody asks. How come righteous people sometimes suffer and wicked people sometimes celebrate? Sometimes you find a person that is totally against religion. He lives, he's healthy, he makes money, and then you find someone that is religious, suffers, sick, poverty, all kinds of problems. The answer is, Rabotai, you have to know one thing. What you see is not reality. You only see a person in this reincarnation, but every person was here in a different body few times already. This is the continuation of his journey. So if you find someone that relatively is righteous and he has problems and suffering and sickness and all kinds of issues, it's very possible that it's a continuation of his past life and now it's adjustment to what the bad things he used to do. Sometimes wicked people, the Torah say, if they do very little mitzvot, they keep only few laws, and 99% of the things they don't keep, the Torah says in the end of Parashat Va'etchanan, I pay them their reward in this life, because they don't have the next world, That's why I pay them in this life, which is temporary, to get rid of them. I will not delay their reward. I will give them instantly to their face to get rid of them. It's a clear verse in the Torah, not interpretation, not commentaries, simple Hebrew. To the righteous people, I reserve the reward for the eternal life. To the wicked people, I give in this short temporary life to their face, take your payment and get out of here. I don't want anything to do with you in the next world. So this is one of the main explanations why sometimes you see very not religious people successful for 20 years. And people that are righteous are having struggle. Don't feel any jealousy. As a matter of fact, if you find someone that is not Shomer Shabbat and is very successful, you should feel the biggest mercy on him. Because by now it's clear that as soon as this person died, he died for eternity. And he got paid in this world for the few good things that he did. So that's why, Rabotai, don't judge what you see by the minute, or by the hour, or by the month, or by the year. We live here 70, 80 years. Last year we were here another 70, 80 years. And the time before, and the time before. And everything you have to fix in this life is continuation for what you didn't fix in your past life. As a matter of fact, I have here a DVD, Life After Death. It's 2.5 hours explaining this question, explaining reincarnation, people that remember their past life, all kinds of things, why people reincarnated with birth defect, all kinds of issues, sicknesses, marriage issues, depression, anxiety, all these things is all a continuation from past life. Watch that film, it will educate you very well. Any more questions? So like I said, okay, I would like again to wish every one of you, first of all, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you, of course, to all the wonderful organizers, to Binyamin, and to Torah Anytime, and to all the other people. And remember, the most...
And the topic of tonight's shir is called Kol Mevaser, an unusual liturgy with an important message.
Why is it that some Jews will spend up to $1,000 for a lemon? Esrog, this is how we do it.
One of the mitzvot on the holiday of Sukkot is the taking of the 4 species. The etrog, the most well-known of those species, is what we will discuss today. An etrog is a citron. In English, it's a citron fruit. It grows in primarily warm climates, like in Israel, in Italy, Morocco. Those are the 3 principal places where we get etrogim. There is a custom that many have to get an etrog specifically from Italy, from Calabria. And this is based on in the Talmud it relates that when God told Moses that you shall take for yourself the fruit of a beautiful tree, he sent messengers to Calabria to bring back etrogim to the desert. And so we emulate that. We do the same as Moses, and we try to get an etrog from Calabria. But that is one tradition. There are other traditions which take specifically from Israel. That needs no elaboration, no explanation. Obviously, from the Holy Land is a good choice. Now, there are a few important details to know about the etrog. First of all, the Torah tells us that it should be hadar, a beautiful fruit. How do you define beauty? Jewish law defines beauty in the following way for an etrog. First of all, it should be clean as possible. So there are etrogim which have little small black dots or sort of a brownish spot on the etrog. These are things which we would try to be careful not to have on an etrog. It's very difficult to get a perfectly clean etrog, but we try to minimize those blemishes. Another important thing about the etrog is that it should be a pure etrog, which means no other species grafted into the tree. Now, it's sometimes typical that in order to get better growth, an etrog is a very sensitive fruit, so they sometimes graft in lemons into the trees. This disqualifies that tree from being used. And so much research is done to make sure that the orchard or the specific tree from where we are getting our etrog is a pure etrog tree with no other species grafted into it. There are ways, by looking at the fruit, by having the fruit, we can tell that it is an etrog.
Actually, there are 4 things that we want to find in an esrog, which 3 of them we could see, and 1 of them we can't see until actually we open it up, and that we don't want to do before the holiday. However, there's a rabbi that inspects the trees and they check the fruits before they actually cut them, so they know that this tree produces this type of fruit. When we look at the esrog, we have here, in Hebrew it's called an ukutz, and this is where the esrog hangs on the tree. One of the things we want to look for in an esrog is that where this stem is found on the esrog, it's inward, and the fruit actually comes past, the skin actually passes that stem. That's one sign of a kosher esrog.
By a lemon, the stem protrudes from the fruit. By an etrog, it's an indented stem.
Another sign of a kosher esrog is the bottom part of the esrog. There are grooves coming down, lines coming down. And another sign of the esrog is that the top is actually round, sort of coming towards the tower.
So it's long on the bottom and then curves upwards towards the top.
Another primary sign is the way the seeds are found in the esrog. The seeds in the esrog are going up and down as opposed to across the esrog. Another thing we see over here is the thickness of the skin before the actual juice.
So those are the 4 signs which are looked for in an etrog. Interesting point about the etrog tree or the etrog fruit is that it's a fruit which the Talmud tells us spends an entire year, all 4 seasons on the tree. Most fruits grow in the spring, some of them in the spring, and they're ready by the fall. The etrog takes an entire year to ripen and mature.
So, what do we use it for?
What we do is we take the esrog together with another 3 species and we make a blessing and we bring it to our heart, and from there we shake to all 6 directions, to the right, to the east, the west, the north, the south, and up and down. We do to each direction 3 times, a total of 18, which is chai.
So if I want to go buy one of these, where do I go?
It should be purchased from a reliable source that will sell the esrog together with the other species. If you were just to go into the regular supermarket like Sobeys or something like that, and you were to purchase this, it's not...
You'd get a lemon.
Yeah.
Although an etrog can be bought for as cheaply as $25, or you can go, you can get one for $1,000. But those, the $1,000 one, the upper range ones, are etrogim which are perfect